across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, the top of the morning to you. It is 2 minutes past 6. Happy Saturday, one and all. I'm Mark Dolan. This is Talk Breakfast. Your weekend starts here. A big show for you today. The BBC On the Brink, Reform UK, have launched an official complaint after illegal immigrants were smuggled into the audience in the studio of Question Time, a show supposedly for the people in this country to debate the political issues of the day. Now, in my view, the BBC have overstepped the mark. This is a shocking transgression of their job. And I'll be dealing with the BBC in no uncertain terms in a special Dolan's Dispatch at 8 o'clock. Do you know something, Dean Spencer, producer of the show? It might get me cancelled. Good. The Nigel Farage racism row rumbles on, but what does it say about our establishment elite that they're more focused on alleged remarks made in the 1970s than Farage's actual policies in 2025? Donald Trump wins a special FIFA World Peace Prize. Have the media been proved horribly wrong about the Donald, America's first orange president? I'll be honest, I think he's doing an incredible job. What do you think? I know he's a narcissist, he's a big fat liar, he's a very strange man, but he's delivering for America. I don't know about you folks, but I've got Trump envy. Have you got Trump envy? Let me know. Would it be better for Keir Starmer if he wore orange makeup, do you think? Does he need to trump up a little bit? Because the knives are out. A new poll puts Labour in fourth position behind even the Greens. Well, the latest breaking this morning is that Health Secretary Wes Streeting is preparing to wield the dagger and has reportedly chosen Angela Rayner, the ginger growler herself, as his running mate. But are Streeting and Rayner the dream team for this country? Is it the dream ticket? Well, it's all about your opinions. My focus for the next 4 hours is to get what you think on the radio and on the telly. 0344 499 1000 is my phone number, and you can call right now and say hello to Tommy, because Tommy is taking your calls. What a producer he is, what a talent. He's a triple threat. He's got the looks, he's got the brawn, and he's got the brain. So find out for yourself. 0344 499 1000. Davis is directing our television output this morning. And Davis, let me tell you, one of the great directors of TV. He's found my better side this morning. If you're listening to the show, that's great to have you. If you do want to watch it, why don't you head to YouTube and you simply put the word talk in the search box and up we pop. Dean Spencer is our executive producer today, which means it will be a 5-star show. And the lead engineer of the programme, the guy holding it all together with sticky tape and hope, is the one and only Engineer Dave. It's all happening. It's the dream team. It's 6:05. Your weekend starts here. This is Talk Breakfast. As the saying goes, let's talk. And we shall kick off with today's front pages, and we'll start with the Sun newspaper, which is Britain's best-selling newspaper. Davis, when you're ready, give me the Sun on the big screen, and let's have a look. 3 Lions World Cup draw. That's gonna be tough, says the Sun newspaper, but at least we're not Scotland. England drew a tough 2026 World Cup group last night, including old foes Croatia and Ghana. Panama was the third side, paired with Harry Kane's 3 Lions, with boss Thomas Tuchel calling it a difficult group, a difficult opener. But unlucky Scotland drew Brazil and Morocco plus Haiti in next summer's North America Spectacular. Listen, I'm no expert on football, but can we have that right? If I read something or I see something or I hear something, Dean Spencer, which looks like nonsense, okay, which looks like fake news, which looks like a pile of you-know-what, this is not a tough group. Ghana, Croatia, Panama? I mean, seriously, it would be more stressful getting in a canoe and rowing down the Panama Canal than playing that team of part-time butchers and bakers and dry cleaners. I mean, seriously, this is not a hard group, okay? And I am no football expert, although I'm happy to do some relief shifts at talkSPORT. I mean, seriously, I met Alan Brazil for the first time yesterday, which is very exciting, of course, one of the titans of talkSPORT. He's a football and broadcasting legend, and I shook his hand, and that hand was like a garden spade, let me tell you. It was big, it was substantial, and I said, Mr. Brazil, privileged to meet you, my name's Mark Dolan. And he said, oh, I know you're Mark Dolan. Alan Brazil knows me, that's it. And then I met Ray Parlour, who's an Arsenal legend. I'm a Spurs fan. Have we got time for this? I met Ray Parlour, and he's a lovely guy, and of course a total legend for Arsenal. Unfortunately, I'm a Spurs fan, so it was painful. It was a bittersweet moment. But Alan Brazil, Ray Parlour, we love talkSPORT, we love Virgin Radio, we love Times Radio, we love Talk, because this is a company that contains all four of those absolutely stellar broadcasting brands. But you'd be wise to keep it Talk this morning, because I'm going to be dealing with the BBC, who have overstepped the mark when it comes to Question Time and smuggling in illegal immigrants as though they've got a stake in our country. How dare you? They've broken the law. They've infiltrated our boundaries, and now suddenly they're like a regular voter. No, no, no. Well, that is today's Dolan's Dispatch. Anyway, I don't think it's a difficult group. Ghana, Croatia might be a slightly better group, but can I just say something about these other teams? You know, the striker at Croatia, he's not going to be on 400 grand a week like all the England players, right? These lads are on a humble salary and they're happy to play for their country, and England should roll them over. And you know what? England won't roll them over. Although I will say that I prefer Thomas Tuchel to Gareth Southgate, who I thought was a wet wipe. So woke. Talking about, you know, it's our responsibilities in society. No! Your responsibility is to win football matches. Right, that's it. That's the end of the sport. The Times newspaper, Labour let women down. Former head of Equality Watchdog attacks government record on single-sex spaces and grooming. Labour has abandoned women over issues such as trans rights and grooming gangs and can no longer call itself the party of equality and feminism, the former head of the Human Rights Watchdog has said. Baroness Faulkner of Margravine, whose term as the head of the Equality and Human Rights Commission ended last week, told The Times Labour had lost touch with its fundamental values. Well, can I just put this out there now, and this will get me cancelled as well, which is going to be good, right? Are you ready for me to be cancelled? Feminism and trans ideology are not compatible, okay? If you think that it's appropriate for a biological man to participate in women's sport, to be in a female space, to be accommodated in a women's prison or a rape crisis centre, you're not a feminist. You're not a feminist, because what feminism is for women, isn't it? Just my opinion. Let me know your thoughts. 03444991000. Daily Telegraph, Streeting, Rayner and the Pact for number 10. We'll be discussing that in detail. Daily Mail, dementia kills 1 in 9. It's time to end cruel injustices. Daily Mirror. See, I'm going too fast now. You see, it was too slow and too much sport and too many stories about Alan Brazil. I know Mark Dolan. I know who you are. Now I've sped up too much. I'm having trouble calibrating. Luckily, this isn't live, and we'll fix it in the edit, won't we, Dave? The Mirror, England's World Cup 2026, 1L of a draw. Guardian, ex-Dulwich pupil Farage told me that's the way to Africa. That's fine. I mean, that's a bit of geography. Daily Star, taking the piece, have an award for ending 8 wars. That's Donald Trump. And last but not least, the Eye Weekend. Wear face mask if you feel ill, public told, as hospitals and schools face record flu surge. I've got nothing to say about face masks, and I never have. It's not really a topic that bothers me. Let me welcome into the studio the one, the only, Paul Cox, comedian, author, broadcaster, friend, lover, father and husband.
All those things all at once.
Top of the morning, how are you, boss?
I'm good. Mark, that was just fascinating. I don't know what the listeners are thinking, but that was such a great intro.
Well, you know, you're very kind. I think we may have lost a few, and
there were some moments in there. There were some twists that I thoroughly enjoyed.
Have you ever done? You're one of the country's finest stand-up comedians. Have you ever had walkouts?
No. Do you know? I've never had a walkout. I have seen walkouts.
It's because you're good.
No, it's not because I'm good. It's because I'm too keen to make people like me. That's what that is. It's got nothing to do whether I'm good or bad. It's just I'm not brave enough to, to try and divide the audience in some way. I just try and get them all to like me, Mark.
Well, there's a few comedians who, in the sort of legendary annals of history, have had walkouts. Bill Hicks, the very satirical American comedian who's sadly no longer with us, he used to get walkouts because it was very uncompromising stuff.
Yeah.
But it was one of those comedians where those that didn't like it went, but those that stayed loved it, sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. No, not with me. You get middle of the road, very likeable chap.
Stop it. No, you undersell yourself. The other two examples I've got, there's and it doesn't matter now because I've forgotten his name, something like Ace, or he's got some sort of unusual name, not like a regular name, but an American comedian who was very... Dice, Dice Clay. And he was a very top comedian, selling... First comedian in America to do arenas, apparently.
Really?
Yeah.
That
just
was
really like maybe sort of mid-90s or something, but it was just like gigantic sort of overnight success thing. And he had this character, Dice Clay, and he was on top of the world. And then he decided to release an album of a really bad gig where half the audience walked out and he was like getting boos and stuff.
Yeah.
And he was doing like anti-comedy, and it was somehow like the worst gig ever. And he deliberately put it out as his sort of as his
I've
special.
never heard anecdotally. A lot of people have spoken to me about this. It didn't work for him, though, did it?
Well, I think it didn't. No, surprise, surprise. But then what happened is now, as usual, 20 years later, it kind of makes him a legend because he chose to just put out. It's a bit like Bob Dylan. You know, Bob Dylan is always annoying, like his fan base. Famously, he went to an electric guitar, which just annoyed everyone. Bob Dylan one year put out a Christmas record. And it was literally like sort of, Silent Night and Jingle Bells. Yeah, like that. And it was just like, you're not supposed to do that if you're Bob Dylan. He did it. He doesn't care. It's like agitating your own crowd. And
yeah, why not?
The other one, not walkouts, but the first time I ever saw Harry Hill, and this was before he was famous, at a small club. And it was a packed room. Half the audience crying with laughter. Half the audience sat there in confused silence.
I love that.
Yeah,
I love watching audiences like that.
He hadn't made it to ITV. It hadn't quite translated yet, but obviously the spark of genius was there.
Yeah,
and it was a bit off the wall, but I loved it.
Isn't it funny that all geniuses have these stories of sort of this polarising of their audience and just never... it's not all about winning them all over at once. It's about dividing them so you end up with these really cult-like, passionate fans.
Yeah.
And then people dislike you as well, and that seems to drive the others along. That's where I'm going wrong, Mark.
Well, no, it's interesting you say that, because I'm like you. I'm because I do the odd gig here and there, not nearly as many as you do, but I just do enough that I'm allowed to still call myself a comedian and pay my subs, as it were, metaphorically. And I will say that I'm like you. I want everyone to have a good time. I'd rather be Elton than Bob Dylan. I want to fill that room. But the best comedians, it seems like what they do is they find their audience.
Yes.
Don't they? And then when they have a tour, it's just the people that like them come, not like a general crowd. So like the Jimmy Carr crowd, they know. I know he's very mainstream, but you know what you're going to get. It's going to be edgy.
My audience seems to be sort of waspy women. That's where I'm at now. It's the 70-year-old women that seem to like me, and I'm not complaining. I appreciate the pants that are sent in the post.
Is that it? Do you waspy women? So do you like do bits of material about how they're going to get like their
No,
full,
I don't know what it
pension?
is. I think I've got that sort of at 46. That sort of I don't know. They want to mother me, Mark.
There's nothing wrong with that at all. Listen, I tell you who wants to mother who. Angela Rayner.
Yes.
And Wes Streeting. Now, Wes Streeting, it's quite clear he wants to be Prime Minister, would you say?
Yes. Yeah, he's been on manoeuvres since Labour won back into power in July 2024. Undoubtedly, and he stood out, didn't he? Because, amongst a sort of bunch of fools, he seemed to be a voice of reason. Yeah. The first thing he did was ban puberty blockers, but then allow them back in suspiciously through the back door through a trial, which I'm incredibly suspicious about, by the way. Because I'd rather understand where people stand. If they're mental, let's see they're mental. I'm okay with that. Then we know what we're fighting against. I'm not sure with Wes Streeting, because he did stand out and sort of say puberty blockers are banned, and then obviously we've got these trials ongoing right now, so they're not banned actually. They're just done through a different route, which hasn't appeased anybody. But Wes Streeting did seem to stand out as a voice of reason. I don't know, but that's against Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves, by the way. So with the idea of Streeting and Rayner being the great revolution that's going to all change our minds about this Labour Party, I'm yet to be convinced, because you're measuring two piles of dog mess, I think, there, Mark.
Well, exactly. And my thing, Paul, is that I try to be as fair as I can on the show. And by the way, you're always fair in your broadcasting as well. I try not to be tribal. I point out very regularly that I've voted for probably all the main parties in my career as a voter, and I'm not locked in with anyone in particular. I just care about the policies. And it is my humble opinion that maybe there have been times in the past when we've needed a left-wing administration, perhaps after the war, with Attlee, the establishment of the NHS, maybe the Blair years when the public sector was a bit underinvested and at least they were pro-business, unlike this Labour government. So, try not to be too tribal. But it's quite clear, isn't it, that at the moment the country needs right-wing policies, right? We need border control, we need low taxes because the growth is so low, and we need to scrap net zero.
So all the key issues that are affecting the population of the UK now, the majority of the population of the UK now, are there because of left-wing policies in the past. Open borders, a terrible economy. And by the way, it's not lost on me that economy is the result of many years of Tory government, etc., etc. But I believe it started with Labour, and I believe Tories compounded it further, and now Labour seem to be taking it back into an even worse direction. Somebody needs to come in, be fiscally responsible, and make the decisions that are right for everybody. It's going to be painful. The further we go down the track that we're on at the moment, the more painful it's going to be when whoever comes in. But a lot of the policies, a lot of the things that we're worried about, asylum seekers, illegal immigration, that's a huge issue, because everything else we see, whether you're trying to use the NHS and not getting a good service and being incredibly upset, or whether you haven't got pennies in your pocket, or whatever it might be, or whether you see crime soaring through the roof because you live in a major city in the UK and you're seeing nothing done about it. It all seems to be as a result of these kind of progressive left-wing politics, let's be kind to everyone stuff. I think we need peace through strength. And we have no peace in this country now. We have this culture war, and we seem to be fighting ourselves.
And if you look at the size of the welfare state, and if you look at the attitude to people that enter the country illegally, it is pathological empathy, isn't it? What they call suicidal empathy.
Yes.
And, nobody doesn't want a world where, we've got the poorest taken care of. No one loves inequality, but the policies of the left sort of tackle that are incredibly self-destructive and don't work.
All built on a baseline of fear, by the way. It's quite clever, really. We're quite fortunate. I feel quite liberated. Nearly every day of the week I get to stand up and say what I think without too much in the way of retribution. You do the same. You say what you think, and occasionally we get a bit of stick, occasionally we don't. Most normal working men and women can't say what they think, because if they do, they get into trouble in some way. We've built this sort of environment of fear where essentially, unless you go along with this religion, and it is a religion, let's face it, this is the woke mind virus religion. If you don't go along with it, you are in trouble in some way. And there are enough people incentivised to make sure that you do get into trouble if you step out of line.
Incentivised is the word. Well, coming up now, the BBC, feeling the heat. Reform UK have officially complained to our national state broadcaster because they featured 2 illegal immigrants on the Question Time show. Is this grounds for scrapping the licence fee? You're listening to Talk Breakfast.
the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. Watching and listening to Talk just got easier. There's now only one place for the home of common sense. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
You are listening to Talk Breakfast. It is 6:23 and the BBC are under pressure now as a result of a complaint by Reform UK over the featuring of two illegal immigrants on the Question Time show on Thursday evening. Let's take a listen to the clip.
So the man in the white shirt, now I know you came over on a small boat. Am I right about that?
Yeah.
What's your response to what you're hearing? Because obviously everyone is talking about people like you.
Well, let me say something first. I just want to clear that leaving the convention doesn't just affect the migrants. It would give ordinary people one less court, less court to protect their rights. Even for weekend checks and the government power, risk on peace settlement in Northern Ireland and damage our security cooperation.
Now, Paul, I've got no objections with having a documentary about illegal immigration which would feature people that have crossed the channel on a dinghy. The audience of Question Time are there to represent the British people, those who have paid into the system, who have the franchise, who have the right to vote, who have a stake in the future of this country. That man is not one of them.
No, he's not. Let's just recap exactly what happened here. Our national broadcaster, which we pay for through our licence fee, if you're still paying it, invited at least two illegal immigrants, by the way, emphasis on the word illegal, so in my mind a crime has been committed, onto the show and wired them up and all of a sudden this guy becomes an expert on the ECHR, later on becomes an expert on the Northern Ireland Protocol. And you can't tell me that that's what he was thinking. You know, this guy's coming over on the boat, so I'm thinking, do you know what I want to do? I want to get on a Question Time and get my point heard. That's not what's happening here. They're trying to do two things. And again, I go back to creating this fear environment. They're trying to humanise this, because if you humanise it, then it's very difficult to have a sort of salient debate around it. So here's the guy, look at him, he's dressed well, he's saying all the right things. How could you possibly hate this person? This isn't about hating human beings, this is about protecting other human beings. These guys are in the minority, okay, and within that minority are another minority which are incredibly dangerous. We've seen what they've done. You've only got to open up the paper every weekend to see exactly what's going on. I don't need to repeat it on live radio and TV, but there have been some very nasty things going on, and it keeps happening. The idea that we humanise them, to me, is not about, oh my God, you know, God, these guys are amazing, aren't they? I didn't really realise. This is the sort of thing Zach Polanski will say, of course, in between trying to magic ladies' boobs bigger. He will be saying, look, this is exactly who we need to support. But from my perspective, it's not about that. We're supposed to collectively look at the situation. This was a discussion about immigration. Okay, so we invited the very people on that we were trying to have a discussion about. I think everybody on there should have said, hang on a minute, what's going on here? I want to know what's going on here. What do the BBC think that it's okay just to invite these people to the table because for whatever reason they think absolutely everybody should have a voice? I don't think absolutely everybody should have a voice. Our prisons are full of people that don't deserve a voice, and some of them are illegal immigrants. So I don't quite understand what they were trying to achieve.
Well, I think you're right about the optics of it. They're normalising people that have breached our border, broken the law to enter this country. I think it's propaganda.
It is propaganda, because what you've got is a problem that they know that this is a tanker they can't turn around. So what do? You justify the direction of the tanker.
Yeah.
You say, we are going in this direction, look at these people, they're absolutely fine, turn the other way, there's other things you need to notice.
Yeah, so what it does is it peddles the doctors and engineers narrative, doesn't it?
Yes, and that guy wasn't a doctor or an engineer either. He had everything he did, he was either being spoken to into his ear. I mean, I've seen the photographs, of course he was being spoken to into his ear, or he was reading off an iPhone.
Yes,
it's remarkable.
It certainly didn't. It wasn't off the cuff, was it? You know, this
no,
is a man.
I mean, he went straight into it. He didn't tell his story, did he? He didn't say it was harrowing to get here. I did it to save my family. He just looked straight down at his iPhone and said the ECHR, and you're thinking, what are you on about, mate?
Yes, and it you know, obviously, you know, my viewers and listeners, yourself, myself, you know, I want to understand the issues facing this country, and I obviously want to hear from everyone. You know, if there was a documentary about illegal immigration, it would be interesting. You know, you've crossed about. Why did you cross about? Who did you pay? I certainly want to hear from these people in the same way that a policeman would want to hear from a burglar when he's just nicked your flat screen telly. You know, so we should talk to these people and hear what motivates them and hear what their expectations are, but not on Question Time, which is basically a kind of microcosm of the British Parliament, but for the public on our national state broadcaster.
Yeah,
it's people's Question Time, isn't it? The equivalent of Prime Minister's Question Time.
I'll be very honest. I was working on Thursday night when it came out, so I didn't see it live, and then I heard, listening to talk or on the way home, and I heard the story, and I thought. It took me a few minutes to dawn how significant the story was, how big the story was.
Yeah.
Because at first I'm just like, well, it's journalism, isn't it? In my mind, it's going, it's journalism. You just want to identify all the voices, and then you start to boil it down to its component parts, and you're like, no, hang on a minute. This is a massive issue for our country, a criminal issue. There are women and girls that are at risk because of these men coming across on boats, and they're nearly all men. And we're giving them a place at the table and saying, just talk to us about it, tell us about it. What do you think?
Yes, and just treating them as equals to our citizens. And if I break into America or Australia, for example, I'm not equal to a tax-paying Australian. I've breached the border. If I've jumped a fence to get into Australia, then I'm not an Australian and I'm not equal to those who are.
No, I
mean,
agree.
on a fundamental human level, yes, we're all human beings, but politically and in terms of the social contract with your nation, you're not.
And they rely on the squeamishness of that to control what we think and say. Because it isn't easy to say these guys aren't equal to us. And what we're saying there, the benchmark we're measuring against is exactly what you say, the social contract. You and I have been paying in for years. Our families have been paying in for years. Many people have been paying in for years. They deserve to be put ahead of these people. That's all we're saying. That the equality should be the equality of outcome in this particular situation. It should be about what you put in versus what you get out. If you are someone who just jumped on a dinghy one day, and by the way, left a perfectly safe country in France to get here, and had broken into the country, much like a burglary, then you are not treated the same way. You should not be treated the same way.
What does the decision by the BBC to feature 2 illegal immigrants on Question Time say about the culture of the organisation, do you think?
Well, I think it's deliberately provocative. I think there's no way a producer or an executive producer looks at that and doesn't know what's going to happen. They play on the lines, but they're preaching to their choir. Don't forget when Tim Davie left, he said that we're the best of society. There's an arrogance within that. They've told themselves that they're the best, so any decision they make is the best decision.
Completely right. I'm delighted to have Paul Cox with me in the studio. We've got a very, very busy show today. At 8 a.m, I'll be dealing with the BBC in no uncertain terms in a very special Dolan's Dispatch. You won't want to miss it. Rachel says, good morning, Mark and team. Tuning into your show at 6 a.m. has become a habit now and signals the start of the weekend. Much love, Rachel. Well, Rachel, straight back at you. Ian says, Mark, it's the height of crudity and misogyny to call Angela Rayner the ginger growler. Come on, have a bit of dignity. Ian, thank you for that. It is, by the way, it is a quote assigned to Angela herself. And that apparently that was mumbled, it was whispered whilst Boris Johnson was doing Prime Minister's Questions that she'd whip out the ginger growler. But I take your point, Ian. That doesn't mean do I have to stop saying ginger growler now?
I don't think you
Paul
do.
Cox?
I don't think you're good at it, are you?
Well, listen, Ian has growled at me, I can't lie. How about this? Let's have a look. Dan in Kent, good morning, Mark. You're absolutely right. You know naff all about football. Croatia knocked us out in the semi-finals 8 years ago, and Ghana are a top African side. You see, that was my little stint as a TalkSport presenter. Didn't last very long, did it? Mick says, good morning, Mark. The EU are preparing for conflict by reintroducing national military service for men. But emergency services, NHS, police, fire, ambulance will also need volunteers. MPs and their families first, please, says Mick. Amanda says, good morning, Mark. And good morning, Paul. The BBC have lost the plot. They really believe that they're invincible and are answerable to no one. I predict their downfall will come when Nigel Farage is PM. Colin says, hi, that migrant on Question Time was reading from a script off his phone. Here we go again. BBC playing games, absolutely appalling. Dan again is back, who says, Mark, I stopped watching Question Time years ago. The audience is not representative of the public. It is 75% left wing. Neil says, good morning, Mark and Paul. Can't wait until the BBC brings Pakistani rapists onto Question Time. Yeah, it's just about it. That's going to be a special, isn't it? A grooming gang special presented by Fiona Bruce, where she'll go, you're somebody that was did the grooming. How was that for you? Was that difficult for you to be a grooming gang? Any illegal immigrant documentary will be coached and rehearsed, so pointless. And by the way, every TV out there these days has a flat screen. Good point, Pete. Listen, I'll get to more of your messages, but coming up, how do we solve the biggest problem facing the country at the moment, right? Which is your right-wing uncle this Christmas. According to a very special woke movement called City of Sanctuary UK, they are advising sort of basically woke lefties on how to cope and deal with family members talking about the asylum crisis. This is not a joke. That's next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
8:36, you are listening to Talk Breakfast. Mark Dolan with you until 10 a.m. and the BBC are feeling the heat because Reform UK have reported them to the authorities for the featuring of an illegal immigrant on their flagship politics show Question Time. That's the topic of today's Dolan's Dispatch at 8 o'clock. Don't miss it. Front pages, iWeekend, wear a face mask if you feel ill, public told. as hospitals and schools face record flu surge. Donald Trump gets a special Peace Prize. Taking the peace is the headline. Guardian, ex-Dulwich pupil Farage told me that's the way to Africa. The Daily Mirror, England's World Cup 2026, 1 L of a draw. Daily Mail, dementia kills 1 in 9. It's time to end cruel injustices. Daily Telegraph, Streeting Rayner and the Pact for number 10. And The Times, Labour let women down. Former head of equality watchdog attacks government's record on single-sex spaces and grooming gangs. But let's get to another crazy story. And this is about, according to a very woke organisation called City of Sanctuary UK, how to talk to your far-right relatives on Christmas Day if they dare to take the view that the border's there for a reason and that illegal immigration is wrong. Take a listen to this clip, courtesy of the brilliant journalist Charlotte Gill.
But I've signed up to its newsletter because I saw that it was giving tips on how to deal with your problematic relatives if they want to talk about immigration, refugees over the Christmas table. We've all been there, you know, you're passing the Brussels sprouts over, before you know it, you're discussing the asylum system. But luckily, City of Sanctuary UK, this charity that wants to turn the UK into sanctuary cities, you know, like the ones that they had in the US under the Democrats, luckily they've got this guide. So in my most recent newsletter about the guide, they write, "Hello Charlotte, seeing family over Christmas, you're not alone if you're thinking about these conversations you might normally shy away from. Maybe there's that uncle with strong opinions or a cousin who shares questionable posts online, and you care deeply about refugee rights but aren't quite sure how to bring it up without things getting ... tense. Well, we've got your back. Download our free Courageous Conversation Guide today."
Now, this is a great piece of journalism from Charlotte Gill, who is a sole operator. Well worth giving her a follow on X. Just search Charlotte Gill, Gill. She's the head of what she calls Doge UK as well. And Paul Cox, hilarious and distressing at the same time, this story.
Yeah, why don't we get a City of Sanctuary from these people? It's ridiculous. I mean, good on Charlotte, by the way. I hope she's using a pseudonym when she joins these mailing lists, because they'll be looking this out now and taking her off otherwise. But yeah, great work from her. Look, I mean, first of all, they are having to redefine far right in order to squash the conversation. So straight away they say any relative that shows any concern for the asylum problem is far right. Straight away, they've created another environment of fear, haven't they? There's all these environments of fear to control people. And, you know, she talks about, she goes on in this, and the letter talks about active listening. Listen to them. Don't always argue, because these are horrible people. They won't understand. You're cleverer than they are. They won't understand. So what you need to do is actively listen and then go away and tweet about it.
Yes, I mean, it's basically a brainwashing organisation which is reaching out to brainwashed people, probably young people, college graduates, in order to go and brainwash Uncle Ernie on Christmas Day.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there are great differences in these people. Obviously, there's the age issue. I know, through having a teenage daughter myself, the curriculum is entirely based, when it comes to media, entirely based on the output of The Guardian, almost. When I went to the school when my daughter was doing GCSEs to talk about how we could help with religion, all the media outlets they pointed you towards were Guardian related. BBC or Guardian related. So anything that's coming out of them, the teachers are listening to, the students are listening to, so therefore they get one view of the world. So anything else that hits them is just seen as bigoted and far right to them. So they have absolutely no idea what to expect. You know, I work in what would be considered centre-right media, and as a result, I know from personal experience that people just assume I'm far right in some way because I'll come on Talk or I'll go somewhere else. And it's utter madness. It's because they've been programmed to believe that these are the correct views, this right side of history nonsense. You have to believe this. Just allow them in. Allowing them in is the kind and right thing to do. Any uncle at the Christmas... By the way, who is doing that? No one says... I mean, I've never had a discussion about the asylum process at Christmas ever, and I don't plan to this year either.
And the problem is that bigoted Uncle Tony is right about everything.
Almost certainly. We love
that
him.
old git, right? That old blowhard, that reactionary thug is right about everything, right? Bigoted Uncle Tony loves his country. I agree with him. Bigoted Uncle Tony thinks that immigration's fine, but it has to be controlled and we have to know who's coming in and they've got to offer something to the country, learn the language, work and participate in the culture. Bigoted Uncle Tony thinks that net zero doesn't make a lot of sense given that China are building coal-fired power stations for fun. Bigoted Uncle Tony agrees with the Supreme Court that there are two sexes. I love bigoted Uncle Tony. Bigoted Uncle Tony is right.
Correct. The thing is, we are bigoted Uncle Tony. That's the problem, Mark. We are the people that the city of Sanctuary are protecting the young, defenceless people from. They need the debate needs to be there as well. They don't really talk about debate in this. They say about actively listening, not trying to persuade people to your views. They can't be persuaded anyway, so don't bother. You want a peaceful Christmas. If you are going to enter into this, have a debate. Listen. Do actively listen, but take it on board. Find out what's motivating this Uncle Tony, who has 40 more years' experience.
Big Uncle Tony.
Yeah.
He remembers when Britain was a great country, right?
Well, maybe. I mean, we do have rose-tinted glasses about this, don't we? I mean, you and I probably fancy the 90s as a very peak halcyon day.
It was good.
It was good, wasn't it? I genuinely believe it was good. I'm sure it wasn't. You know, if we were to be thrust back there now, everything wouldn't be amazing. But
of course not.
It was the last time we genuinely felt like we belonged in a country that looked after us and was something to be proud of, and we were allowed to be proud of it.
Yes, and I'm not saying that in the 80s and the 90s that Britain was not a diverse society. It actually was.
Yeah, of course.
But what it was is it was a society, it was coherent, it was joined up. And if you look at the 80s, for example, the numbers don't lie. We had cricket score economic growth. You know, you had small businesses just like proliferating all over the place. Just look, I often draw attention to Only Fools and Horses because I know it's a fictional comedy show, but if you look at what happened to Del Boy, that was the story of Britain, where he's gone from being, you know, very humble market sort of trade guy, right, with his stall, to the silver briefcase and a disposable income and aspiration, right? Del Boy was the story of Britain in the 80s.
Also, Del Boy, breaking news, was far right.
Oh, I mean, he was another bigoted Uncle Tony. Let me know what you think. Do you agree with your bigoted Uncle Tony? 03444991000. He's not an unreasonable man. I will say the sherry doesn't agree with him.
No.
He changes. He takes a dark turn.
He does.
Plus, with his diabetes, he needs to lay off the mince pies.
He probably
But
should.
apart from that, I think he's sound. I can't lie. Let me know. Let me know your thoughts about Big Uncle Tony, please, on the text message. Ted says, good morning, Mark. The indolent left are the enemy of good governance and order. That applies well to the BBC. The enemy incarnate. Imagine then a situation where Britain paid Lord Horwar's wages through World War II. That's where we are, and it's time we rid ourselves of this unaccountable albatross once and for all. That's an interesting message there from I believe it's Tad. Morning, Mark. I found myself more and more agreeing with my missus's bigoted uncle, especially as I've just found out Richmond is signed up to this sanctuary rubbish. The 80s were better. Morning, Mark and Paul. This right-wing guide smacks of what the National Socialists did in the 1930s under the whose regime was that? Let me think, says Steve. Good morning, Mark. City of Refuge, well, Glasgow, where I live, has had 1,200 cases of female genital mutilation reported. There's been no charges. Tells us all we need to know. Good morning, Mark. The only reason Labour are delaying these elections is so they can give the councils bribe money, this money, to make their communities better. Funny, isn't it? Low in the polls. Chuck these councils lots of money. Yeah, sorry, Mark, bribe money to get them people to vote Labour in 2 years' time. Absolute joke, says Zoe. Ken in Oldham, migrants on Question Time, were asked why women and children did not come over from Afghanistan. They did not answer. We'll get to more of your messages shortly, but two of the country's biggest companies have just cancelled Christmas. This is Talk Breakfast.
you can't try and snipe at the Conservatives for things that weren't our fault.
Oh, I mean, I
This
haven't
is
got
not one.
time. Don't tell your big mate Donald Trump to tell his big mate Vladimir Putin to stop killing people. Then we can solve that problem like that.
Won't be surprised to know I disagree.
Why? Why do you disagree, though? Why do you want our young people left on the scrap heap? The court's time being wasted, laying down a ruling on what is a woman. You and I have been speaking for far too many years about
And
this.
actually, you know, I'm very grateful to you too, because you have always covered this topic.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
You're listening to Talk Breakfast. It is 6:50. Lovely to have your company. BBC on the brink. Reform UK have launched a complaint following the corporation's decision to feature two illegal immigrants on the flagship politics show Question Time. Pat is in Suffolk. Good morning, Pat. Welcome to Talk Breakfast.
Good morning, good morning.
What's happening in Suffolk? Is it drizzly this morning?
I must admit, I haven't opened the curtains.
Oh, Pat, listen.
It was horrible yesterday, though. Anyway.
But wait, hold fire. Slow down a little bit, Pat. You've not opened the curtains. I hope you're dressed.
Oh, yes.
Good, because I don't think you should appear on the radio in your night clothes, or worse.
It's just trying to keep the cold out, you know. It's a bit reverse like when in the summer you keep them closed to keep the sun out, you know. It's the other way round.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Well, look, top of the morning, Pat. Lovely to have you calling us from Suffolk. What do you think about the BBC featuring illegal immigrants?
Well, as I said, I was saying to your chappie there.
Yeah, Tommy.
Basically, Panorama of the BBC had put out this long letter saying that due to that it's a very topical subject that we must have all the participants in it, right? So my argument is I don't watch Question Time anymore. In fact, I very little watch the BBC anymore. But if they have had or are going to have a discussion on the rapist gangs, are we going to invite some of the rapists, the Pakistani rapists, into the audience? Are we going to do that? You know, if we're going to be fair here, you know, you've got to have everybody a full, frank discussion, a full hearing. You know, that's the BBC's argument. But I suspect if it did happen, the BBC would be cancelled the next day, because I think that would be beyond the pale, as inviting immigrants in, you know, illegal immigrants.
Yeah, Pat, what does it say about the culture of the corporation that they would decide to do a stunt like this?
Well, as I believe one of your callers said, or I think it was your thing there,
yeah,
they think they can do anything. They've got the Gary Lineker syndrome. In other words, because he is so famous and so well known, he can say what he likes and sod everybody else. You know,
They're untouchable. They seem untouchable.
They think that because they are the BBC and because we have to pay for them, and the fact that the government, and particularly this particular government, is extremely left, that they can be left-wing without saying... Now, on something I thought about recently is, do you remember after the Gulf War, and we had the sexed-up document... John Campbell, doesn't know what's his name, Alistair Campbell, went to war with the BBC. And do you remember the gentleman who actually said the sex document? I can't think of his name now, but he got fired because the BBC had upset the Labour Party. Now, if that had flipped it round and been the Tories, they wouldn't have fired him, would they?
You raise a good point. It's just hard to disagree with what Pat said, Paul Cox.
It is difficult to disagree with that. Good morning, Pat. I'm glad you're dressed. I'm glad you're dressed. I'm very glad you're dressed, actually. But I understand the curtains thing. It's expensive to heat the house. But you're absolutely right. I think they're a law unto themselves. We've got ourselves into a situation now where we have a whole sort of this elite within society who believe because they've told themselves that they're right, that we should all fall in line in some way. And what the crime is always noticing, Pat. So what you're doing there is you're noticing what's going on, and therefore if you were to voice that, obviously you can voice it here, and thank you for calling in, but if you were to voice that in certain parts of society, you would be beaten down for it. You'd be the bigoted Uncle Tony at the Christmas table. But never stop noticing, Pat, because eventually tides turn. And I think what's happening now is we've kind of gone over the peak of the madness, and we're starting to come down the other side of this wave now. And I think hopefully over the next couple of years we're going to see a change in government and a change of view.
Well, I hope so. I hope so. But one last thing is we have the far right. We accept that. Where's the far left? Nobody talks about the far left, do we?
They're in charge of the BBC and the country, Pat. That's where they are.
That is the trouble. Anyway, many thanks for taking my call. I must get on because I got up early this morning because I've got to go and see the doctor. Well, you know, the old flu jabby thing, you know.
Well, that's it, Pat. We want to keep those ailments at bay. We wish you well, and do call me again soon. Look after yourself, big guy. Early on a Saturday morning, it is 6:55. There's a fantastic story in the papers today. HSBC, which is, of course, one of the biggest banks in the world, has banned staff at their branches from wearing Christmas jumpers. And they're saying it's because if you wear a Christmas jumper and you've got bad news, such as, I'm so sorry, you know, the computer says no, you can't borrow that money for a mortgage, that somehow you'll be triggered by it because they're wearing a Santa jumper. What do you make of this?
Well, obviously it's lunacy. It's all part of the same stuff, isn't it? The idea that you go into a bank and you can actually sort of complain that the guy or lady in front of you is wearing a jolly jumper it is absolutely mental. I mean, I don't believe these stories, by the way, in the sense I don't believe the reasons behind them. HSBC are not saying that, you know, we don't want our staff to wear jumpers because it's not appropriate, because it's been appropriate for decades. For millennia.
And they've been delivering bad news to customers in a Santa jumper for decades.
Yeah, exactly. So nothing's changed. All that's changed is they want to appease everybody else. So Christmas is seen as bad because Christmas is associated with Christianity. Somehow in this part of the world, Christianity is associated with white people. Let's not make any bones about that. And therefore, Christianity, white people equals bad. So we don't want anybody who doesn't fit into that group to feel uncomfortable about these people. It's madness. Just accept what it is, which is fun. I mean, I'm offended by the jumpers because they're ridiculous, not because I'm being turned down for a mortgage.
Yeah, it's the ones that light up. I mean, if your jumper requires 2 AA batteries, you've crossed the line.
I think you have crossed the line.
I've got to say, especially it wreaks havoc with the old Bosch washing machine, let me tell you. And the guy comes around to fix it every year going, not again. I'm really sorry about that. And the other thing is that you're right. I mean, it's the idea now. We're getting close to a situation, Paul, where if you wish someone a Merry Christmas, you'll get cancelled because it's not inclusive.
Well, it's not supposed to be inclusive, and not everything has to be inclusive. You can discriminate. You can discriminate in a whole number of ways. You know, we're expected to celebrate all sorts of other things about all sorts of other people.
Diwali, Ramadan.
Yeah, if we said absolutely not, if we said Eid's a load of rubbish, or I'm not going into the bank if he's wearing an Eid jumper, then we'd all be in trouble. We don't care, actually. It doesn't come up.
You realise that just the 3 words that you saying Eid's a load of rubbish, right? It's going to get clipped.
Yeah, that's it.
It's going to be a meme.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, you'll be looking over your shoulder.
That will be for many years to come.
But yeah, that's it. Screwfix have also banned staff. Well, what is it? Yell it in my ear, Dean. Screwfix have banned staff from putting up Christmas decorations. Have they got a reason why? There's no reason why. There's just no Christmas decorations.
And
there.
you would associate Screwfix with the working classes. You know, it's the building industry that is using Screwfix, and you associate that with the working classes, and therefore the sort of people that are likely to enjoy Christmas and not be offended by this whatsoever.
We can laugh about it, but it is an example of the erasure of our culture, is it not?
Yeah, and that's really important as well, by the way, because people will poo-poo that and say absolutely not. But it's this whole Fabian approach to everything, isn't it? Fabian approach to our government. Generational small changes build up to this one great big change, and before you know, you wake up in 2050 and Christmas is banned.
A couple of years ago, and I used to buy these, it's funny, isn't it, right? M&S had these Christmas tea bags in a red box, and I loved it because it's just, I get excited about Christmas, so I'm going to have Christmas tea bags. I don't know whether the leaves are Christmassy, right? It's basically just normal tea.
Yeah.
But it's in a red box, and it's Christmas, right? Anyway, they changed it to festive tea. It's not festive tea, it is Christmas tea.
Exactly. We should be celebrating Christmas for what it is.
I agree with bigoted Uncle Tony. He's right about everything. What do you think? Folks, Reform UK waged war on the BBC. More on that next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
7:03, top of the morning. Mark Dolan with you on Talk Breakfast. Happy Saturday, one and all. Wakey, wakey, rise and shine. Your weekend starts here. The BBC on the brink. Reform UK have launched an official complaint after illegal immigrants were smuggled into the audience of Question Time, a show supposedly for the people in this country to debate the political issues of the day. Well, in my view, the BBC have overstepped the mark. This is a shocking transgression of their job, of their role, and I'll be dealing with the BBC in no uncertain terms in a special Dolan's Dispatch at 8 a.m. Meanwhile, the Nigel Farage racism row rumbles on, but what does it say about our establishment elite? That they're more focused on alleged remarks made in the 1970s than Farage's actual policies in 2025. Meanwhile, Donald Trump wins a special FIFA World Peace Prize. Have the media been proved horribly wrong about the Donald, America's first orange president? Have you got Trump envy? I've got Trump envy. He has closed the southern border, ended illegal immigration. We can only dream of such a policy here. He's improved the terms by which America trades with the world. He's brought manufacturing back to the United States. He's got rid of wokery. He's got men out of the female locker room. He's scrapped net zero. I've got Trump envy, have you? I know he's not perfect. He's a narcissist. He's a liar. He's a strange man. But he's delivering for his people. America first. Would it be so wrong for it to be Britain first? Speaking of which, should we talk about the worst Prime Minister in history? Well, the knives are out for Sir Keir Starmer. As a new poll puts Labour in fourth position behind the Greens, Health Secretary Wes Streeting prepares to wield the dagger and has reportedly chosen Angela Rayner as his running mate. So, are Streeting and Rayner the dream team or Britain's worst nightmare? And I've got to tell you about this hilarious story, OK? There's a woke organisation called Cities of Sanctuary, and what they're doing, they've done a pamphlet, right, a leaflet, advising people how to handle their right-wing relatives over Christmas. OK, basically it's all, you know, open borders and net zero, crazy woke stuff. And this pamphlet is explaining to them how they can talk to bigoted Uncle Tony and try to tell him that diversity is our strength and that everyone crossing the channel's a doctor or an engineer. Well, I got to say, I agree with bigoted Uncle Tony. He loves his country. He believes the border's there for a reason. He thinks that if you enter the country on a dinghy, you have broken the law. He is patriotic. He thinks net zero makes no sense whilst China is building coal-fired power stations for fun. He thinks there are two sexes. Uncle Tony's right, isn't he? Let me know your thoughts. My priority for the next 3 hours is to get your opinions on the radio and on the telly. You can listen to us on DAB+ and in-app. Don't forget to download the new app, which is the Talk app. Or you can watch the show. Just head to YouTube, search Talk, and up we pop. My phone number is 0344 499 1000. I'd like to talk to you this morning, please. So pick up the phone, give me a call. Let's put you on the national television and radio airwaves. You won't be cancelled, not on my watch. This is, in my opinion, all about your opinions. So 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. Or send me a cheeky voice note. This is Talk, so let's talk. A lovely message from Dave in Bristol. Good morning, Mark. Bigoted Uncle Tony should be British Uncle Tony, although I'd prefer not to use the name Tony as an example of someone who's right about stuff, because it brings back unpleasant memories of the Tony who started this woke nonsense and open borders and who is definitely more globalist than British. And I think Dave in Bristol is referring to Tony Blair, who is definitely not bigoted Uncle Tony, with whom I agree. 7:07, couple of front pages. We've got the Eye Weekend. Wear face mask if you feel ill, public told. The Guardian, ex-Dulwich pupil. Farage told me that's the way to Africa. Daily Mail, dementia kills 1 in 9. It's time to end cruel injustices. Daily Mirror, England's World Cup 2026, 1L of a draw. We have drawn Panama, Croatia and Ghana. Daily Star, Don gets first FIFA prize, taking the peace. Have an award for ending 8 wars. I don't know why the Star is so dismissive. Donald Trump is a peace-loving president. That is proven in his actions and his achievements so far. The Times newspaper, Labour let women down. Former head of equality watchdog attacks government's record on single-sex spaces and grooming. Daily Telegraph, streeting Rayner and the pact for number 10. Health Secretary's allies make overtures for joint ticket challenge to Starmer. And Christmas jumpers could upset customers. HSBC tells staff. Another example of cancelling Christmas. We'll get to that shortly. The Sun newspaper, 3 Lions World Cup draw. That's gonna be tough, but at least we're not Scotland. Let's get reaction to the big stories of the day from a very good friend of mine, retired Scotland Yard Detective Chief Inspector Mike Neville. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Mark.
Now, the lead story today is that Reform UK are furious about the BBC's decision on Question Time to feature 2 illegal immigrants. Do you think they're right to complain?
Of course they're right to complain, and we're all going to right to complain. The BBC used to be, one of the most respected voices in the world. I took a great group of Frenchmen on a walk of London last week, and we looked at the radio station where Charles de Gaulle would have broadcast to the people of France when they were occupied. The BBC was just seen as this wonderful organisation that was impartial, and what we see now is a left-wing biased organisation. And it's a wider view, really, but my view is this: if people want the Guardian TV station, then let them pay for it, because I literally do not want that, and I don't want to be forced to pay money. And I remember being on the BBC, and they were talking about women in prison, and I don't think I've been invited back, because I told them that one of the reasons a lot of women are in prison, of course, is because they don't pay the TV licence. So I think the wider view is that the BBC should fund itself. Those who want to listen to this sort of silly nonsense should pay for it. But the facts are that Reform are correct to complain about this Question Time programme.
Most definitely. And I just think it's a misunderstanding of the role of Question Time, which is kind of a mini parliament, isn't it? It's the equivalent of the House of Commons for the public. And what you've got in the audience is the equivalent of the green benches. And in principle, although often not in reality, it's people that represent the entire political spectrum, left, right and centre. So it's there for people that have a stake in this country, people that pay their taxes, that have the vote. Illegal immigrants do not fulfil those criteria.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's amazing, isn't it, that a man can cross several borders. He can manage to get across the channel. He can manage to get to the TV station, and whilst becoming an expert on the Northern Ireland peace protocols and the European Court of Human Rights, and having sat there, he can be picked out by Fiona Bruce to ask a question. I mean, my only advice to that man is to buy a national lottery ticket this weekend. It's incredible.
That is brilliant advice. And I wonder whether this was an attempt to stitch up Zia Youssef, the former chairman of Reform UK, by featuring these illegal immigrants. I just wonder whether they were stirring the pot a little bit, the BBC producers.
Of course, and that's one of my favourite phrases. I tell that to my children: don't stir the pot. And they do stir the pot, because what they do, of course, if you look at there's always bias on the panel. It used to be, two sort of centre right, 2 centre left. Now it's utterly biased. So you've got something like Zia Youssef having to fight off. It's 3 against 1 every single time. And the audience as well. We're told that the audience is carefully selected. But and I know that whilst me and you and people on the centre right, we have a rest, we have a life, the lefties never sleep. They're committed to the cause, and they will ring up Question Time and they'll tell Question Time that, oh no, we're Reform voters, and they'll do everything in their power to pack that audience and give an impression that it's somehow that's the way the public think. And anybody who wants to watch it, they think to themselves, well, how come they don't reflect the views of anybody I know? But my advice is this, and I think I said this to you yesterday, I've got some blood pressure tablets here. If you're going to watch Question Time and you've got any views which are slightly different from Jeremy Corbyn, you need to take them.
Yeah, this will definitely make the temperature rise, won't it? I think ultimately it brings the BBC into disrepute. What it exists for is to provide balanced news coverage, and it's there to represent the mentality of and the attitudes of and the opinions of the whole country. But it's not that anymore, is it? The BBC speaks to a very small portion of the population in its output.
Yeah, absolutely, nationally. I mean, I think the only argument for the BBC is possibly to have, local broadcasters, Radio Staffordshire or whatever else that most media outlets wouldn't focus on, the lost dog in Stoke or a story up in Bolton or something like that. But I think there's something there that we need local broadcasters who focus on those local interest stories. But we do not need any more national news. You've got several stations that provide an output without anybody being forced to pay for it, and so its purpose is done. It doesn't need to be there. We don't all sit round listening to the wireless or anymore. We have many choices, and this is one of them that we don't need.
Most definitely, I couldn't agree with you more. A quick politics story, if you can, Mike. The Daily Telegraph, Streeting, Rayner and the Pact for Number 10. Wes Streeting's allies, of course, he's the Health Secretary, are pressing Angela Rayner to sign up to a joint ticket for the Labour leadership. The proposal would see Ms Rayner promised a cabinet role and perhaps a return to being Deputy PM if she backs a future Streeting leadership bid. Would a change of Prime Minister improve things for the country?
No, it would get worse. These people, Rayner is an utterly committed red socialist. It would be utterly dreadful, and people think Streeting's some kind of reasonable character. You only have to look into his past. He's talking about throwing journalists under a train because they come out with slightly right-wing views. It would be an utter disgrace. But what strikes me all the time about the standard of politics, Mark, is that if I in the police or anybody in a job here right now had not paid their taxes, had been found out swindling of some kind, I would have been sacked from the police. I wouldn't have been lowered in rank and told to go to the back and give it 6 months and you can come back and you can do your job again. It wouldn't have happened at all. And I think what people see is that time and time again that things like taxes are for the little people. These big people don't have to pay them and they suddenly just move on. But this government is becoming a parody. It's becoming some sort of comedy show. And all those people who voted Labour, you must put your head in your hands. But, there's some people, my mother used to say that there's people in Bolton who vote for a pig with a red ribbon on it. And I think times have changed and they're going to stop doing it. My mother realised that was wrong in 1979, so hopefully people might catch up now.
Has the woke media's excessive focus on Nigel Farage's alleged remarks as a schoolboy backfired? That's next.
I have confidence in the Conservatives, and I have confidence in the energy and combativeness of Kemi.
But the public don't seem to be. The public don't seem to agree with you.
Let's see.
Now, the Royal soap opera meets the Epstein files.
Prince Andrew's ties to Epstein already represent one of the monarchy's greatest reputational meltdowns.
This 10-page birthday letter you wrote to Jeffrey Epstein makes a pretty cringeworthy reading.
I find them very embarrassing to see.
First convicted, first indicted, you continued a business and personal friendship.
It was not a business
Not a business relationship.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is 7:19. You're listening to Talk Breakfast. Coming up at 8 a.m. in Dolan's Dispatch, the BBC have lost the plot, featuring 2 illegal immigrants on Question Time, which is a show supposedly on paper there for the British people. You couldn't make it up. Let's get reaction from John in Newcastle. Good morning, John.
Good morning. I, over the years, well, you know, many years ago, the BBC was great. In the 1975s, all the sitcoms and everything else. Nowadays, it's nothing like that. And I believe now it's not fit for purpose. It really isn't. It's disgusting. The licence fee is one of the highest in Europe. And for what you get for it is very little. Actually, that Question Time, it's very rare I watch BBC, but it happened to be the case. I didn't put it on for long, but the reality was that how on earth can you put illegal immigrants, which shouldn't be here in the first place, on the television? How can you do that? It's beggars beyond belief. And this government, just like the last government, they're very, very poor. You've got David Lammy, who's telling us that we should rejoin the European Union as such, and yet they've got the Prime Minister, the top man, saying that we shouldn't. And this is the first, Prime Minister and the substitute Prime Minister. What kind of farce are we living in this country at the present time? It just disgusts me that, that we've got thousands of people going to food banks throughout this land, and they're second-class citizens. That's exactly what they are. When you think that an illegal immigrant can come here by the thousands, a great many of them don't even speak the language. We're told that as well. And so, therefore, it's really a farce, this country at the present time, and I'm ashamed of it, to be honest, which is a shame in itself, because you go through the decades and you think, you're one of the best countries on the world, and yes, we were, but we're certainly not now. I mean, look at when you go to France, for instance. Why don't these immigrants stay in France? It's a beautiful country. I go there on holiday. They don't go because they don't get a hotel. They don't go because they don't get 3 square meals a day, £38 spending money a week. And they'll not be cold at this time of year. No, they just go back to the hotel room and keep warm. When our own people, you can imagine a great many of them are cold, and especially the old age pensioners who, your blood's not the same as what it was when you were young, possibly. And no, I just think it's a sham, this country, and it's a shame. We've got to look forward to something better in the future.
Well, stay with me, John, because John raised a really good point, Mike. The BBC is there to enhance and celebrate this country, not demonise it, talk it down, and make the country an embarrassment.
Well, you've seen on the latest history show on the British Empire, all it does is it employ left-wing people who've got some kind of axe to grind against Britain, and they run us down. And this has a real wide impact on the nation, because when I was a young lad, you know, I read the Victor comic and all these sort of things, and I wanted to join the army. I was proud of my nation. Why is it now that young people don't want to join the armed forces? A lot of it is to do with the nonsense that's been put in their head by left-wing teachers and left-wing broadcasters running down this nation, which has given so much to the world and made such a difference, and is so awful, apparently, according to the left, that everybody wants to come here.
Well, this is exactly right. And we do need, don't we, to look again at the British Empire, Mike, given the fact that, yes, crimes were committed, slavery was an appalling injustice, and of course we weren't the only country that did it. But there are many positives to the British Empire. The rolling out.
We were the greatest empire in the world, Mark.
Right.
There's no shame. These things go on in history.
Tell us, with your knowledge, right? Because I've read a lot about this, but enormously positive things happened in regard to the Third World as a result of the British Empire.
Of course it did. Look at it. You don't have to go into Trafalgar Square. There's a statue of General Napier, who stopped the thing of Sooty, where in India widows had been thrown on the funeral pyre and burnt to death. You know, we brought some civilization to these nations. We brought infrastructure, railways, hospitals, schooling, the rule of law, so many things. You don't get many Indians criticising the British Empire. We did so many good things. It stopped slavery. This is the thing. How many British lives were lost stopping slavery? It was a force for good. Of course, in every big organisation or big thing, mistakes are made, some evil people exist. But when you weigh it in the balance, the British Empire was the greatest empire in the world, and it brought a lot of good to these. Well, look at how the English is spread around the world and is used as the international language.
Yes, crimes were committed, it's shameful, but ultimately the British Empire was a benevolent project. Why else would there be a community of nations that were supposedly subjugated who are now part of the Commonwealth and who love this country? You couldn't make it up.
I think the greatest way to look at it is what would the people of Hong Kong want right now?
Oh, my goodness.
People of Hong Kong, I was there as a young soldier, they would want us back. They are now ruled by an evil, oppressive empire. It would be far better for the people of Hong Kong if Britain was in charge there again.
And it's the same in Bahrain, where I did some shows a little while ago. They love the Brits and they would desperately love to have them back. 7:25, John in Newcastle. Listen, I want to ask you about this. There's a mad story, and it's courtesy of the journalist Charlotte Gill, who you can find on X. She's a great sort of citizen journalist. And she's found an organisation, John, that's called Cities of Sanctuary. And what they've done is they've done a leaflet, like a pamphlet, a guide to how to talk to your right-wing uncle on Christmas Day. The agenda is basically, you know, pro-diversity, pro-open borders. And my point, John, is that bigoted Uncle Tony is right about everything. He thinks there's a border there for a reason. He thinks if you cross the channel in a dinghy, you've broken the law. He thinks net zero makes no sense whilst China's building coal-fired power stations for fun. And he thinks there are two biological sexes. John, do you agree with bigoted Uncle Tony?
Not always. You know, I just find it quite amazing what we have to put up with today. Yeah. I just, it's hard to believe, you know, it really is hard to believe that we're in such a state as we are. And when you've got this David Lammy, you know, talking about things, you know, about going back into Europe, 5 million Labour supporters voted to get out of the European Union. 5 million. And that's the people that would vote Labour.
Correct.
And I just think it's a bit of a farce. But the television licence should be scrapped. And they should be like every other television company. They should fight for that audience, not be given it on a silver plate.
Brilliant call, John. Do call me again soon. Really enjoyed your company. A lot of calls coming in, a lot of texts about bigoted Uncle Tony. This guy is so dangerous on Christmas Day, according to a woke organisation, Mike. Jack in Gravesend has said, good morning, Mark. We need more big Uncle Tonys. I grew up in the 90s and the 2000s, and the difference in 30 years is unbelievable. This country needs all the chess pieces to be placed back on the board sensibly. Maggie in London says, good morning, Mark. Surely you wouldn't invite bigoted uncles and aunties. You'd be off to the illegals hotel inviting them, wouldn't you? Well, wouldn't you? These holier-than-thou do-gooders make me sick. Let's see if I got any other Uncle Tony messages. Yeah, they're coming in thick and fast. We'll get to them in just a moment. But Uncle Tony, he's right about everything, isn't he? Mike?
Well, I'm Uncle Tony, I suppose. Yes, I think we are right about things. And what you've got, though, is you've got when I went to school, you were given some facts and you were given some information, and you went on with it. Now these kids have been utterly brainwashed about net zero and green things, the problems of slavery. You only have to look at the history syllabus. I remember my children being taught about Mary Seacole, which is one of the biggest fictions you could ever imagine. 5 minutes research shows that what the kids are being taught is utter rubbish. But the kids are bombarded with this stuff. The kids are bombarded on TV shows. But then again, I suppose they come up against reality. One of my big things at the moment is that, when I was in the police in London, it's easy for people outside to criticise you and say things like, oh, the police are racist, they stop and search so many black people, and they do this and they do that. And it was really, these problems that existed in the country were inner city issues. Now everybody's having a share. Now it's in Epping, Bournemouth, Crowborough, and everybody's tasting the evil fruits, I suppose, of multiculturalism, and they don't like the taste of that fruit. So I think the talk around Christmas dinners may be slightly different, because I think in places like Crowborough, it would have been very fashionable to be a centrist dad and vote Liberal Democrats and all this sort of carry on, and suddenly it's not like that anymore, that these nice people, these doctors and engineers who are allegedly arriving on a boat, suddenly come smashing into your town and are going to wreck the infrastructure of your town. And so I think that this is where there'll be a few more Uncle Tonys who people will be nodding their head with this Christmas.
Most definitely. Let me ask you before we let you go, Mike. It's a story across the papers, including in The Guardian. Ex-Dulwich pupil Farage told me that's the way to Africa. A former Dulwich College pupil who claims a teenage Nigel Farage told him that's the way back to Africa has said he felt compelled to speak out by the Reform UK leader's attempt at denying or dismissing the hurt of his alleged targets. Yinka Bankole, who claims that he'd just started at the school when a 17-year-old Farage selected him for abuse, said he decided to tell his story in full after watching the Reform leader's press conference on Thursday. Now, Farage told reporters that he'd never been racist or anti-Semitic with malice. What do you make of this story?
Well, I think if we all were tape recorded and we heard things that we said when we were a lad at school, 50 years ago, then we'd all be guilty of something. This was the 1970s, where the BBC was showing Alf Garnett and Ain't Half Hot Mum and things like that. And so it was a different sort of culture. But what you have here is the hypocrisy of the left. So these are the people who will tell us that Shamina Begum, who went to ISIS at 15 and was there taking part in where there was beheadings and all sorts of evilness going on. We're told that she was 15 when she did that, so that was obviously a big mistake, and she's just a child, and she should be allowed into this country. But then we're saying somebody who said some allegedly racist things 50 years ago is some kind of criminal. And again, the left will tell you that, when you should go to a youth court until you're 21. Incredible, 21. I was a soldier at 16, because you're not fully developed, and any mistakes you make, like you get cautions as a child, they're wiped out. They're the ones hunting this down. But I think what all it does is it might please the Guardian readers, but I think anybody who votes Reform will just think this is a political attack. The establishment are in absolute panic. The political establishment establishment I know they're going to get crushed. So not only Labour, but you have the Tory chairman describing reform badges as like a Nazi thing, and they're all very worried that their established parties have had a good time for the last 100 or so years, you know, swapping round, a few nice jobs, get the money in, and now all of this is coming to an end. And if this is the best they can dig up, then what have we to worry about? But on an amusing story at the end, Mark, I once featured in The Guardian. There was a story about me in The Guardian about my police unit, and I went to buy it. But what I did is I bought a copy of Playboy magazine, and I slipped The Guardian inside it so I didn't feel embarrassed leaving the shop.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Otherwise, you get dirty looks. Mike, have a brilliant Saturday. Really enjoyed your contribution, as always. What a rock star you are. Retired Scotland Yard Detective Chief Inspector Mike Neville. And Mike's an expert on policing, but Dean and I have decided that we want to hear Mike's opinions on everything, don't we? Because he's a very wise man. He's a bit like bigoted Uncle Tony. There's a left-wing group called Cities of Sanctuary, and they're advising woke youngsters how to handle your right-wing uncle on Christmas Day. Well, I think you'll find that Uncle Tony's right about most things. Let me know if you agree. Do you agree with bigoted Uncle Tony, who thinks that we should have border control? There are two sexes and net zero makes no sense. 03444991000. By the way, we're going to talk about the BBC at 8 o'clock. It is a special Dolan's dispatch. What it's going to do is it's going to cause me to never be employed by the BBC again. They will never have me after today's Dolan's dispatch. Do I care? Do I care? Good luck with that. This is Talk Breakfast, 7:33.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
You are listening to Talk Breakfast. It is 7:36. Happy Saturday, one and all. This from Pete, who says, good morning, Mark. I'm not racist, but if I say it, I'm not racist, but I say it daily. If people don't like it in this country and don't want to fit in with our ways, then that's the exit door over there, wherever it might be in the world, and that includes Timbuktu. Mark in Selby says, good morning, Mark. Farage demonstrates a grasp of geography. That's a non-story. People forget Starmer was a communist and participated in a camp run by an ex-KGB spy. That is a story worth digging into. And how about this? Christmas jumpers triggering citizens. Bill in Cheshire. I'm triggered every time I see Starmer, Reeves, Lammy, etc. on TV. They make me vomit. Can't they be banned as well? Dave in South Gloucester. Mark, do we know anything about this man that we heard accusing Nigel Farage of this ridiculous nonsense which may or may not have happened 50 years ago? What's his name? What does he do for a living? What are his politics? Maybe some enterprising journalists should dig into this paragon of virtue's background to confirm he's never said anything untoward himself. And Tony says, Mark, where were the pro-deportation representatives on Question Time? Well, Tony in Southampton, you couldn't have anyone as extreme as that, could you? Not on the BBC. Donald Trump has said Europe faces civilization erasure. He says that Europe faces civilization erasure from migration. He said that basically if you don't tackle illegal immigration, you're not going to have a Europe anymore. You're not going to have a Britain anymore. Is he right? Let's get the views of Robert Bates, Research Director at the Centre for Migration Control. Good morning, Robert.
Morning, Mark. How are you?
I'm very well, and it's egregious, isn't it, that the leader of a foreign country can see how badly we're going wrong and our own leaders can't.
It is. It does feel like it's a minute to midnight, and the only person trying to frankly wake up Europe from its slumber is the President of the United States. And he's absolutely right, actually, that Europe really is on the precipice of heading towards a period unlike anything that we've ever seen in the continent's history. And I think, unfortunately, far too many of the political class in this country, and most certainly on the continent, are almost very happy with the way things are progressing. I think it's not just, of course, the mass migration, the unprecedented, ahistoric mass migration that we've seen in the last few decades, but it's that combined with a kind of apathy and disdain for Britain's culture, for Europe's culture, for our history, for our heritage, and really for effectively having a strong sense of identity of who we are and where we should be going off the back of that. Unfortunately, what we've seen really since at least the 1990s is a real cultural relativism that is embarrassed by what Europe has done, it's embarrassed by what Britain has done, and instead it is enamoured with any other culture from around the world. And unfortunately, what that means is as the host culture begins to become more self-effacing and more shy and begins to become less present in everyday life, is you end up with a vacuum that is filled by the cultures of those nations from which individuals are returning, are arriving. So I think we really need to switch on here that multiculturalism, mass migration, the twin-headed demon that has been afflicted on Britain and Europe for the last few decades is taken us to a point now where there is very little time and there's very little room for manoeuvre to actually do anything but take very, very serious practical policy measures to reverse the damage that has been done and will continue to be done so.
Well, yes, because there's a lot of focus on the practical consequences of large-scale legal net migration and also illegal immigration. You know, the impact on our infrastructure, the impact on the economy, because most people, even those coming legally here, will be a net drain on the taxpayer across a lifetime. So we look at the practicalities, which are pretty awful, you know, NHS, housing, schools, the roads. But there's not enough attention on the cultural impact of mass migration.
Not at all, and it is something that I think many people are still very uncomfortable to talk about. I don't think people like pointing out that Britain is the Sharia law court capital of Europe. I don't think Britain, and many people in Britain like pointing out that we've got sort of the imposition of horrid new cultural trends such as FGM, which is suddenly exploding in this country. I think people feel a bit uncomfortable by that, and that is in
first cousin marriage.
First cousin marriage, of course, absolutely, that's a very big one. And it's because we've had, at the same time that we've seen the arrival of millions of people from perhaps culturally distant nations, we've had our own identity and our own view of the world that has been forged by a civilization and society that's existed for over a millennia. We've had that eroded and told that it's something to be ashamed of. We're told that, you know, anything in British history that it happened before 1947 is evil and wicked and something that we should be eschewing. And unfortunately, what that is trying to do is that's unmooring the British population from their own framework of understanding the world. And instead, we've just had really left-wing activists telling us for the last few decades that the only righteous attitude towards immigration is X, the only way to view society is Y. And none of that is based on actually any of the the collective wisdom that we've accumulated over centuries. And instead, actually, we are now just sort of drifting around, unsure as to what's real, unsure as to what's virtuous, and instead effectively just having to gobble up a lot of unpleasant practices. So I think we really need to recognise that legal mass migration in particular, which is the bigger cause of the societal and cultural change, although illegal migration is, of course, a huge affront to sovereignty in Britain's borders. But it's the legal migration that's seen such huge numbers come, where assimilation has never happened. It's been given up on by the political class. And instead, we've been seeing situations in the east of London where effectively what were once really, really bedded, entrenched communities that had existed there for hundreds, over 1,000 years. The Cockneys, for instance, they were a very, very historic people, have been replaced in large part in those communities by individuals that have arrived in the last 20 or 30 years, and often with cultures that are less refined and less based in sort of a Judeo-Christian background or a background that was in any way sort of linked to the classical civilizational traits of the Greeks and Romans. So we've completely abandoned a really, really long pedigree of useful and the best attempts of human nature to build themselves up, and instead we've replaced it with whatever seems to be coming over, and not really made any attempt to say, no, we believe in X, Y, and Z, and if you're coming to Britain, you will assimilate into these ways.
Yes, and you're right about the Cockneys who have disappeared from London. Similarly, the London Irish as well. And it would be useful for Sadiq Khan, the Mayor of London, to know that it was the Cockneys predominantly and the London Irish immigrants who actually did build the city, not people from all over the planet. This doesn't have to be, does it, Robert, about skin colour? Because, you know, this is not some kind of clarion call for a white Britain. That's not going to happen. There's a difference between a multi-ethnic society, which can be very successful, look at Rishi Sunak, and a multicultural society. And is it helpful and important to draw that distinction?
Well, 100%. I think that's absolutely right, Mark. But, you know, with the levels of migration that we see at the moment and we have seen, it's very difficult. It's about culture, and it's very difficult to have a prevailing culture when you've been so prepared to tolerate individuals not making that effort. And we now have a situation where sort of, you know, an individual might arrive in the UK from France, migrating to Britain, and, you know, they'll have encountered 30 different cultures within the first couple of hours. And, you know, what do you assimilate into at that point? What are the sort of practical norms of how you conduct yourself in that country if you just simply don't have an overriding dominant culture in a country? And that's the real problem here with multiculturalism, is it gives no blueprint as to how society operates. It gives no blueprint as to how a day-to-day interaction operates. Instead, you end up with sort of atomized individuals floating around, and then you end up with sort of attempts to construct Britishness in the most sort of vapid and vague terms, such as, oh, to be British is to be fair. Well, that doesn't really actually mean anything, because, you know, I would say there are billions of people around the world who are probably quite fair individuals. So if you're defining Britishness on the sort of lowest common denominator basis, it really doesn't actually mean anything. So I think it's time we sort of became a bit more culturally confident in ourselves. We were very, very prepared to say, if you're coming to this country, these are the rules that you play by, this is how we do things. And as you said, there's nothing to do with race in that. That is it's a point of attitudes, it's a point of conduct, it's not a point of skin colour at all.
Most definitely. Briefly, if you can, Robert, I think that it's, you know, very, very clear. Like I mentioned, you know, we have a multi-ethnic society now. I've got, Robert, people listening to and watching this show who are British people of colour. And let me tell you that they are as furious as anyone else about the dilution of the culture of this country. And they are as furious as anyone else about illegal and unsustainable legal migration.
And they'd be perfectly right to, because, of course, illegal migration is just an affront. It's clearly something that should be dealt with across the board, and there should be unanimity on that point. I mean, the fact that we've now got Zach Polansky, the leader of the Green Party, somehow trying to defend it shows really the efforts that the left-wing activists will go to just undermine the nation state. But when it comes to legal migration as well, you know, time and time again, people in this country have voted for migration to be brought down instead.
And that is people across all ethnicities. And this is why I think, Robert, that if Reform win at the next election, they'll be swept to power on a multi-ethnic vote. People don't realise that.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. You know, every corner of the country, I think you see any individual of any colour or creed prepared to sort of recognise that this is a situation that's got out of hand. Net migration of foreign nationals was 3 million between 2020 and 2024. I mean, that to anyone is an absolutely obscene state of affairs, and there's a churn there in the people living in this country that just simply isn't sustainable. There's no foundation, there's no bedrock of what this country is if we have an ever-changing population. We don't have people with roots in this country. We don't have people that feel a real attachment. I think 1 in 25 people actually living in this country arrived under the so-called Boris wave, which is a staggering statistic that just shows how fast the pace of change is. And that is something that affects everyone. It affects anyone who is British. It affects anyone who has arrived legally and made every effort to assimilate. It's something that effectively just leaves us floating around really without a strong sense of identity. And this is the real problem of what we've seen since the 1990s, is we've seen a political class that doesn't care about this country at all. They're internationalists. They just like these general broad stroke values rather than actually a nation that's existed since the 8th or 9th century. And this is something that actually hopefully we'll see in 2029 a government prepared to recognise wholeheartedly and heed the advice of the administration in the United States.
Most definitely. Robert, brilliant job as always. My thanks to Robert Bates, Research Director at the Centre for Migration Control. Is Donald Trump right? Do we face an existential threat in this country? Are we going to lose what Britain is if policies don't change? This is Talk Breakfast.
Hi, I'm Kevin O'Sullivan, and I've got a message for you. Welcome back to this blockbuster edition of What Just Happened. It really is a good one, I think. It's so funny that people keep calling me Meghan Markle, because it's Meghan Sussex now.
Flynn has said, Samara, I agree with you all the time, but you're just boring.
Hi! I refuse to work for ITV ever again. Oh! What Just Happened? Fridays at 9 on Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
So, to pass the 3 shekels on to Dad would be nothing to her.
Well, indeed, it would be a drop in the ocean. There are some media outlets suggesting that she has reached out. Does that story have any authenticity? They're not clear, these sources, whether they've spoken, but the Telegraph and the iPaper are running with the suggestion that some rapprochement has been attempted. Are you hearing that?
I'm hearing that there hasn't been a direct conversation with Meghan. Now, listen, this is a moving beast, and of course, this all kicked off on Wednesday, and so it might be that some overtures have been made. For me, it just feels too little, too late. I mean, you wait until your father's leg has been amputated.
Yeah.
He's moved to the Philippines out of desperation. First of all, he moved to Mexico, then he moved to the Philippines, then he has another heart attack. He already had a heart attack on the eve of the royal wedding. He has his leg amputated, the PR pressure becomes too much, and then she gets sources around her to leak out a very woolly line about, how, she's reached out. But we don't really know the specifics. And, I will be working on this for tomorrow's paper.
Well, I know.
But,
I can't wait.
It feels to me too little, too late.
Too little. I cannot wait for your piece tomorrow because you are always #1 with the royal exclusives, Charlotte, and it's very useful for my YouTube channel, which is based around royal news and entertainment, the Mark Dolan Show on YouTube, if you're interested in the royal stuff. Charlotte, briefly, if you can, Princess Catherine shows us how it's done. Oh, we've lost Charlotte. There you go. She's just dropped off. But listen, Princess Catherine has shown how it's done because her Christmas Carol concert yesterday was absolutely majestic. It was a celebration of Christmas. It was a lovely occasion. And there is a member of the royal family that totally understands the gig, knows what a dignified princess looked like. And that is Catherine, and that is most certainly not Meghan Markle. Folks, strap yourselves in. Dolan's dispatch is coming. I'll be dealing with the BBC in no uncertain terms. The question time row is just wild, and I'll be giving my response in 2 minutes' time. It's a Talk Breakfast.
Across the UK on DAB+. On YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
.803. I'm Mark Dolan. Top of the morning to you. This is Talk Breakfast. Your weekend starts here and a big show for you today. The BBC on the brink. Reform UK have launched an official complaint after illegal immigrants were smuggled into the audience of Question Time, a show supposedly for the people in this country to debate the political issues of the day. That is the topic of today's Dolan's Dispatch in just 60 seconds' time. You won't want to miss it. Meanwhile, the Nigel Farage racism row rumbles on. But what does it say about our establishment elite that they're more focused on remarks made, allegedly, in the 1970s than Farage's actual policies in 2025? Meanwhile, Donald Trump wins a special FIFA World Peace Prize. Have the media been proved horribly wrong about the Donald, America's first orange president? Have you got Trump envy? Because I do. He's closed the southern border, he's ended illegal immigration, he's improved the terms by which America trades with the world, he's ended wokery and chucked men out of women's sport. He's got rid of net zero, which makes no sense when China are building coal-fired power stations to come. I've got Trump envy. Have you? Meanwhile, the knives are out for Sir Keir Starmer as a new poll puts Labour in fourth position behind the Greens. Health Secretary Wes Streeting prepares to wield the dagger and has reportedly chosen Angela Rayner, the ginger growler herself, as his running mate. So, are Streeting and Rayner the dream team, or are they Britain's worst nightmare? Now, my priority for the next 2 hours is to get your opinions on the radio and on the telly. You can listen to us on DAB, you can listen to us via the app, and of course, you can watch us on TV. Just head to YouTube, search Talk, and up we pop. My phone number is 0344 499 1000. What consequences should the BBC face for putting 2 illegal immigrants into the studio audience of Question Time? How do you solve a problem like the BBC? What is your recipe? What do you think we should do with our national state broadcaster? Do we defund? Do you get rid of the licence fee? Do you change the Director General? What is your solution? 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. Send me a voice note, and as the saying goes, let's talk. And at 5 minutes past 8, we start with Dolan's Dispatch. This will make you laugh. Because the BBC is losing £1 billion a year as a result of people who refuse to pay the licence fee, they've launched a new campaign. They're going to say thank you. That's right, they're not going to try to make balanced news programmes. No. They're not going to try to entertain us. They're not going to have reflecting voices across the political spectrum. They're going to basically say thank you. They're not going to suddenly be patriotic, even though they are the British Broadcasting Corporation. No such luck. They're not going to start making comedies that are funny. They're not going to cancel their woke agenda. I'm afraid not. They're simply going to say thank you. That's right. At the end of every programme, you're going to get a cheeky little pop-up, right? A little screen which just says thank you, from an organisation whose annual income is in excess of £5 billion. Well, BBC, thanks, but no thanks. No thanks for the horribly biased left-wing views featured across your current affairs output. No thanks for a perpetual anti-Brexit narrative before, during and after the referendum. No thanks for painfully unfunny, politically correct sitcoms and finger-wagging progressive storylines in Doctor Who. No thanks for the rewriting of our history through an anti-British lens and an obsession with the British Empire, which in my view had vast positives as well as historic crimes. And no thanks for their obsession with slavery, which we as a nation were the first major power to end. No thanks to the BBC's adoption of trans ideology with plot lines in daytime soap operas in which characters are high-fived when they announce that their gender reassignment surgery is coming up. No thanks to 180 quid a year by way of an obligatory tax that old ladies currently shivering in their homes must pay, with the threat of jail if they do not. No thanks to woke presenters on 1.3 million quid a year to read out football results, or £1 million quid a year to play records on the radio. No thanks for the pro-Hamas propaganda pumping out fake news which has risked and cost Israeli lives. No thanks for the deep thread of anti-Semitism that runs through the corporation. Not my words, the words of Danny Cohen, former director of television at the BBC. No thanks for presenters like Nihal Arthur-Naika on BBC Radio 5 Live, who finds it deeply upsetting, disturbing and triggering to work with white people. No thanks to the pro-lockdown, pro-mask narrative during COVID, silencing dissenting voices who, in my view, have been proved right. No thanks to the show trial documentary that demonised people who perfectly reasonably didn't want to take the jab because they felt that statistically they didn't need it. I wouldn't take it again, would you? I think they've been proved right, but they were demonised by the BBC as anti-vaxxers. No thanks to being talked down to, gaslit, and being supposedly far right for thinking that we should have a border and for loving our country. No thanks to the weird partisan clapping in the unbalanced audiences of Question Time and the featuring of illegal immigrants in the audience. Like they've got a stake in this society, like they've got any right to influence the political discourse of this country. They do not. But the BBC, in its infinite wisdom, decides to platform them. The BBC have decided that the way they're going to fix all of this is to say thank you. Well, thanks but no thanks, BBC. There are no masterminds at the Beeb, only pointless celebrities. Our national state broadcaster is fast becoming Britain's weakest link. 0344 499 1000, your reaction to the BBC platforming illegal immigrants on a show supposedly dedicated to the concerns of British taxpayers. David is in Gloucestershire. Good morning, David. Welcome to Talk Breakfast.
Good morning, Mark. How are you, everybody?
Well, listen, we're all very well because Talk Radio and Talk TV, the home of common sense. Am I going to cancel myself with that Dolan's dispatch? Do you think the BBC will be unlikely to offer me work anytime soon?
I can't see they will anytime soon. You know, maybe next week, week after, maybe, yeah, you know, if you reassigned yourself or, you know, came out as something else or...
You're right. I need to be a trans lesbian woman of colour, don't I?
That's the one. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, listen, if you don't mind, do you mind calling me Lorraine from now on, please?
Oh, okay, Lorraine. Yeah, we'll do.
That'll boost my career. Well, listen, David, what do you think about it? What was your first reaction when you discovered that, you know, two people had been planted in the audience that had entered the country illegally?
Well, I think it's an absolute blooming disgrace. You know, it is a disgrace. You know, I mean, it's the fact that they were planted, you know, with microphones, with, you know, with earpieces, you know, being told what to say. You know, I mean, maybe if they've been genuine, maybe if they found a genuine one and they just happened to slip them in, you know, they just happened to slip their way in, you know, you can't help that, maybe, you know, but every time I watch Question Time, I get 5 minutes in, and that's Fiona Bruce. She's so biased, I have to switch it off with her. You know, I'm almost, the number of times I've gone to bed and I've said to my wife, I said, oh, I'll turn that, I had to throw the telly at the you know, she is so biased, it's untrue. You know, it's blatant.
Well, I agree with you, David, because what she does is she interrupts the right-leaning guests and lets the lefties speak without interruption.
That is it. But the reason I rang was, that people say about this political correctness, and people think it means woke or this and that and da-da-da-da-da. It actually means political correctness, by the strictest nature of the word, is believing your political masters. And you have to believe into it. And actually, and if you don't believe it, that is when you're not politically correct.
Yes.
So that is why we get all this trans debate. Oh, a man could be a woman. All these immigrants. Oh, it's good for us, really. Oh, it's doing this country so much good. The whole greenhouse. Climate change. I'm a retired farmer. What will be will be. It's weather. I can tell you, I've seen, I was doing the job for 40 years, or nearly 35 years before my accident. But, I will give you a very simple fact to dismiss climate change. Did you know that there were, up in northern Scotland by Hadrian's Wall, was the Ice Age, and there was a glacier going through there? 2 million years later, in the year 2000 and something, when the Romans were here, did you know it was the best place in the Roman Empire to grow wine?
Wow. So you've gone from a glacier to lovely sunny conditions and growing grapes.
Yeah. And it was the best.
That sounds like climate change. Why didn't the cavemen do something about climate change? Were they bigots or something? What happened to them? They must have been far right. Do you think the cavemen were far right? They didn't do climate change, net zero and all that?
No. That's what Stonehenge was built for. They used to take them down. They used to stand them down there and put them in the middle of the circle and throw fruit at them and say, you're a climate change denier.
Yeah, that's exactly what they did.
That's the truth.
The world's gone mad. I mean, is there a balance to this, right? Is there an opposite view, which is the BBC is enjoyed by millions of people every week who love the output, award-winning dramas, compelling news coverage. It's the most trusted news brand in the world, David. It's only basically the price of a coffee a week. The BBC works very hard to be politically neutral. And, is there a defence that can be made of the BBC?
There might have been once, but not anymore. I think after the Trump debacle a couple of weeks ago, and you had them on, and there was a few other people had these various producers came on, and they actually turned around and said, oh, well, he deserved it because people have to be told what his story is. What are you on about? So they'll do that to Nigel Farage. That'll be the next one. They deserved it.
Oh, yeah.
I grew up in a certain type of household. If you've got a certain... I think everybody grew up in a certain household. I think they probably called us middle class or whatever, working middle class, something like that. So we were a BBC family. And Dad only had BBC on. We weren't allowed to watch Grange Hill. We couldn't watch the young ones because they might have blighted our lives. We didn't watch ITV as a matter of sort of choice because that was a bit low level. That was a bit, that was a bit working class.
Yes, I do.
And that's what, I'm a child of the 70s, and that's the way it was. But no, not anymore. The BBC have lost the plot completely.
It's interesting, isn't it? Well, the BBC says Amanda has become more like a left-wing political party. The problem is that we've been complaining about this a long time. It wouldn't be difficult for the BBC to change. I mean, if you were Director General, what would you do with it, David?
What would I do with it? Wow. What would I do with it? You'd have to go through a new broom. And you'd have to completely change all senior management, and and you'd have to put diktats out that it has to be politically, unpolitically biased and everything, and people would have to lose their jobs, but it never does. People who are politically biased get promoted, and it's the same with everything. I mean, you see it with the police force, within the establishment. The more biased they are, the more left wing they are, the higher up the job. If you're right wing, as you said. Your bigoted Uncle Tony, well, I am the Uncle Tony, we're always going to keep getting pushed out. We keep getting told, you're wrong. I mean, it was interesting the other day. We went into down our local pub. There's a couple of lads there, and one of them's doing politics as a degree. And we've been talking to him a few times, and my wife said to him, oh, how are you getting on? And he said, what party do you like? Oh, I quite like the Greens. Well, Jack Luhanski's latest plan is to go to see Putin and ask him to put down his weapons. It's just, It's just beyond madness. But my idea would be, let's get it on. If this is that simple, and we need to stop the war in Ukraine, why doesn't somebody say, well, here's your plane ticket? Because I'll put a couple of quid in and we can crowdfund it and we'll send him over to Putin and see if it works. If it works, the bloke's a genius. And I'll vote for Green.
I love it. I love it. Listen, what a great call, David. Thank you so much for that. Call me again soon. A common sense ex-farmer, David Gloucestershire, who points out that we've always had climate change. A big reaction on the message board, I've got to say. Good morning, Mark. I've cancelled my subscription to the BBC and I urge everyone to do the same. That's the only way that you're going to stop this organisation. That's Martin in Nottinghamshire. Sue in Cambridge says, good morning, Mark. This should be a subscription service, the BBC, and we can then choose and leave. They are lefties and activists. They are biased, deceitful, and drive chaotic values to enable the darkness of the far left. And how about this? Let's have a look. History will show that's... Oh, no, sorry, I've lost track of that one. We'll get to more of your messages in just a moment. A little bit of a glitch on the system. But let me say that it's all happening. By the way, if you're watching on YouTube, some people have had an issue with the sound, which I think we've fixed. So head over to YouTube, search Talkin', and we will pop up. Listen, folks, so much to get through. How do you solve a problem like the BBC? Donald Trump has said that Europe faces a civilization crisis if it doesn't close the borders. Is he right? We'll debate that next.
Hi, I'm Kevin O'Sullivan, and I've got a message for you. Welcome back to this blockbuster edition of What Just Happened. It really is a good one, I think. It's so funny that people keep calling me Meghan Markle, because it's Meghan Sussex now.
Flynn has said, Samara, I agree with you all the time, but you're just boring. Oh, my God.
I refuse to work for ITV ever again.
Oh!
What Just Happened? Fridays at 9 on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Lovely to have your company. It is Talk Breakfast, 8:22, and the BBC featured 2 illegal immigrants on Question Time. It's got the country talking, and it's got you very excised this morning. Ben says, good morning, Mark. I loved your Dolan's Dispatch monologue. I watched Question Time only because I like Zia Youssef, who's one of the coolest orators within any party. He's cool and collected. The BBC plant backfired on them. The only fool on the show was the Labour MP Tapp, who criticised Zia for Zia's takedown of the BBC's plant migrant. Tapp also apologised for being a soldier in Afghanistan, saying to the migrant, I was in Afghanistan and know why you left. Tapp was in Afghanistan but never went out on patrol as he was deemed unfit for action. Tapp was a disgrace on the show. Well, were the BBC a disgrace for featuring 2 illegal immigrants? Let's get the views now of 2 men that have entered the country and the studio legally. Political commentator Mike Indian. And he's shown me his papers, Conservative councillor Matthew Goodwin-Freeman. Great to see you, lads.
Good. Surely the shirt gets me past any UK border force.
It does. For those listening on the radio,
to be fair, but
Matthew Goodwin-Freeman is wearing a Union Jack T-shirt, which I've got to say will get you cancelled.
I was going to say, I'm surprised you haven't pixelated it already or something.
Someone hasn't tried to, put you from a lamppost as well.
But to be honest, if the police raided my house, they'd find far too many Union flags, so,
And I will say, if you're listening on the radio, that Mike Indian is dressed in a lovely autumnal sweater, which is almost a Christmas jumper territory.
Almost, yeah. I'd love to get a Christmas jumper, I would. I just can't decide. There's so many great options these days.
I've got one that's a T-Rex, that's a tree Rex, a Christmas tree Rex, but I need to find a Union Jack one for this year, I think.
That is quality. Well, listen, let me tell you that Mike Indian, my viewers and listeners are very excised about this Question Time. It's a fantastic flagship show of the BBC, watched by a couple of million people every Thursday night. It's there, obviously, isn't it, as a sort of mini parliament, like a proxy of parliament, but with the people on the backbenches rather than politicians. Why, therefore, did it feature 2 people that had entered the country illegally?
I think it's just a symptomatic of how a lot of the mainstream media's outlets for politics, particularly the BBC, have struggled to maintain relevance in a proliferation of the digital age. And I can remember, I've been in the Question Time audience, must have been 10, 12 years ago, and they put someone in the audience who was a rough sleeper from in the area at the time as well. So these kind of audience plant tactics are nothing new for Question Time to do as well. And the whole point is to try and get the sort of viral moments that will be circulated on social media as well. So in a sense, the producers have done their job in getting people talking about it too. I would contest your listener's description of Zia Youssef as cool, but I don't know if anyone in politics is cool. I don't think anyone in politics ever aspires to be cool. Otherwise you wouldn't go into politics. But I think it's a good example of, I think, Mark, how these programmes that once commanded huge audiences, huge attention, are struggling to find relevance now as well. And their only option really is to try and tap into the politics of outrage.
Well, I wonder if there's more to it than just ratings, because Question Time doesn't do too badly, considering it's on at like 10:35 in the evening. A couple of million viewers. It's by no means on its last legs as a format. I mean, it's the #1 political discussion show on the air. So I think rumours of its death are a little premature. I think it was more than ratings. I think this was an agenda, a narrative that was being peddled, Matthew.
Well, I don't know about you, but I've not watched Question Time for many, many years. And I know a lot of people who've just completely turned off from it. It is just constant bashing. The reason why it's probably one of the best political shows on the BBC is because it's one of probably the only political shows on the BBC where you actually get some politics opinions and some fiery debates. I do agree. I think a lot of this was to get those viral moments. The BBC has got to move into a digital age. Those clips of the illegal immigrants speaking have gone around the world. The problem is, I think it has backfired because the anger from people in the public that you have illegal immigrants sitting in an audience taking part in a political discussion show in a country that they shouldn't even be in. And then the guy that they turned to, who they spoke about his experience from Afghanistan, listed off all these countries that he had come through where he had been rejected for asylum. But hey-ho, he's here in the UK. No doubt he'll be approved because we have to pick up everyone else's problems. That's the issue. It was less about the fact it was illegal immigrants being planted in the audience and more it just exposed how silly and hypocritical we are as a country for letting them here.
Yes, Mike, why why wasn't there a copper outside waiting to collect this guy and slam him into the back of a Home Office van?
I mean, you're assuming that there's enough funding available for there to be a Home Office van on tap outside
nice
as well.
Nice to have a copper as well, wouldn't it?
I mean, you know, I've said this before. The big issue is that we don't have, our immigration system has not functioned as a totality for a while now. We have taken individual decisions over the last particularly 20 years or so that have led to increases in net migration figures. We've decided to use that as the benchmark as well.
Yeah.
You know, now we're seeing language like the Boris wave flowing. I've got high hopes for Shabana Mahmood coming in. I think she has grasped the importance of this issue, and I think this is one example of where the Labour government has realised that unless they do take firmer action on immigration and push back against a lot of people who, you know, sort of people like some traditionally socially liberal voters that to go for the left, then they're not going to win re-election in 3 to 4 years' time. But unless they take a wider view of what the system is for, and I think that also looks at, you know, planning who comes in. I think the Migration Advisory Committee should be far more activist about saying, okay, we need this profession here, we need that profession there. And also, you know, no one wants to see the continuation of small boat crossings as well. But it's a blight
tell that to the
on a
Labour
modern
politicians.
society.
I mean, I think I'm going to really shock everyone now and agree with every word you've said, Mike.
Oh my God,
the view that
what's going on?
The view that you've expressed is not shared by the governing party of this country, and certainly not its supporters.
It depends on which side you look at. I mean, you know, there's been reports today in the Times about Tony Blair not being satisfied with the direction of this government too, and he's about to share a platform with Shabana Mahmood going into next year. There is a real chance of this. It's funny to see that the credible candidates that are being talked about to replace Keir Starmer as Labour leader before the next election are all drawn from the right of the Labour Party as well. And of course, you know, for example, Wes Streeting has already seen his own majority reduced because of, you know, the left eating away at that due to the Gaza vote too. Shabana Mahmood doesn't have to worry about that. She comes from an area of Birmingham where her majority is solid too. She's very close to Morgan McSweeney, who's widely seen as the architect of Labour's last election victory only 16, 17 months ago. And this is the wing of the party that is to be tougher on migration as well. But don't forget, it was also the decisions of the Blair government, you know, not transitional controls in 2004 when we had the rapid expansion of the European Union in that year that's been widely credited by people like Nigel Farage with facilitating the waves of mass migration that we've seen since then.
Matthew?
The BBC should not have put 2 illegal immigrants in an audience. They should have called the police and said, hey, we've got 2 illegal immigrants here, do you want to take them? It just shows the state that this country is in. Yeah, they were doing an immigration special down in Dover, fine, but you don't need to have 2 illegal immigrants in the audience. They are illegal immigrants. I'm not going to call them irregular migrants like the Labour Party likes to call them. They shouldn't be here.
Irregular
and they
migrants.
are that's what the Labour Party now calls them instead of illegal migrants. And the fact is that they shouldn't be here. And the guy admitted he has been refused asylum in a host of countries before he got to the UK. Well, if you're refused asylum, you're supposed to go back. You're not supposed to carry on, keep going to more and more and more. He's been refused. He shouldn't be here. He's got to be gone.
And what about the BBC? I mean, why do you think our viewers and listeners, Mike, are so furious about this intervention by the BBC? I take your point that it might have been to make headlines and get ratings, but why do you think it's bothered so many people?
Well, I think at the moment elicits quite the degree of fury, I think, on the right than the BBC being... I mean, look, the BBC is going through undoubtedly a deep state of crisis at the moment. You know,
it was the latest crisis, isn't it?
I mean, you know, they've lost the 2 most senior people on, you know, the editor-in-chief, the director-general, and then, you know, the head of news and current affairs too. For many years, many people have relied on the BBC. It's still by far and away one of the most popular consumed media channels too. But of course, the fact that everyone pays towards it gives them, I think, a stake in it as well. And there's always a perception that no one's ever quite happy with the current affairs output of the BBC. What the corporation has done for years, and this is backed up, I think, by, you know, successive journalists, you know, Steve Richards, Lewis Goodall, have all worked in those. The corporation ties itself in knots on its editorial lines, trying to please everybody. And I think they have to accept that in a polarised, you know, pluralistic media landscape, they are not going to be able to do that. What they need to do is offer good, you know, fact-checking, good analysis and information to people as well, rather than trying to bait individuals into responses, either from the audience or from individuals on political panel shows.
Yeah.
There you go. It is 8:31 and there is an organisation, a movement called City of Sanctuary UK. And what they're doing is they've created a pamphlet, like a guide for essentially sort of young left-wing people to cope with their right-wing uncle on Christmas Day, right? This is bigoted Uncle Tony. And what these lefties are doing now, they're going in with a pamphlet and they're going to be explaining to bigoted Uncle Tony that diversity is our strength, that open borders are empathetic, and that net zero has any logic whatsoever. But here's a question for you. Is bigoted Uncle Tony right? That's next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is 8:34. Thanks to my brilliant team today, including Dave, the engineer, who's been discussing the music on this show. A couple of you don't like the opening music bed. Dave, do you want to just give us a little blast of it, right? Just this is how we start the top of each hour, OK? Take a listen to this. Take a listen to this. So what... So what I want to know is, do you like the music at the top of the hour? Because this show belongs to you, OK? I'm passionately committed to the kind of radio and TV show that you want to hear every morning. And therefore, do you like this music bed? Text me 87222. Like the music, don't like the music, and we'll get your thoughts on that. But listen, music to my ears is all of your comments about anything into the show, including this from... Tracy in Chingford. Good morning, Mark. Years ago, the TV licence was for the BBC, but now it seems to have a monopoly on all live TV. So if you don't have one, you cannot watch any live TV on any channel or internet. Surely this is not right. And Alan in Pimlico says, good morning, Mark. The BBC pumps no end of repeats. But while in the past, they used to indicate when a programme was repeated, now they don't. And this makes the public waste their time. Alan is not happy about that. Well, no repeats here on Talk TV. This is live, and as live as you'll get. So, a woke movement called City of Sanctuary UK is advising lefties on how to deal with their right-wing uncles this Christmas. Let's take a listen. Is it ready? We've got a clip of the brilliant journalist Charlotte Gill, who has unearthed this wonderful story, right? A pamphlet, a guide to left-wing youngsters on how to handle their bigoted right-wing relatives on Christmas Day. Take it away.
But I've signed up to its newsletter because I saw that it was giving tips on how to deal with your problematic relatives if they want to talk about immigration, refugees over the Christmas table. We've all been there, you know, you're passing the Brussels sprouts over, before you know it, you're discussing the asylum system. But luckily, City of Sanctuary UK, this charity that wants to turn the UK into sanctuary cities, you know, like the ones that they had in the US under the Democrats. Luckily, they've got this guide. So in my most recent newsletter about the guide, they write, hello, Charlotte. Seeing family over Christmas, you're not alone if you're thinking about these conversations you might normally shy away from. Maybe there's that uncle with strong opinions, or a cousin who shares questionable posts online, and you care deeply about refugee rights but aren't quite sure how to bring it up without things getting ... tense. Well, we've got your back. Download our free Courageous Conversation Guide today.
That is the brilliant Charlotte Gill. I would recommend you go and follow her on X, just at Charlotte Gill, Gill, because she's very good at exposing left-wing nonsense, and she's also heading up what she's calling UK Doge, which is about value for money for the taxpayer. Charlotte Gill is a star. Listen, Matthew, I mean, it's comedy, but it's disturbing as well, isn't it?
I mean, they wouldn't want to come round to my family Christmas. God, that's what, you know, we love
how many people are going to be at
we
your
love
family Christmas as well.
politics debates and things like that. It's the best time of year.
Will you be having gammon on Christmas Day?
We'll be having gammon on Boxing Day.
Yeah, and you see
on
what
Christmas
I've done there?
Day, it is the turkey, the whole shebang, all the traditions. Look, I mean, that is just a massive waste of taxpayers' money. It's absolutely ridiculous. I must say their campaign must be doing really poorly, because I've not seen a single one of these leaflets, and I hope that they carry on not handing said leaflets out to people, because I'm not seeing any of them anywhere. So, I mean, God, look, Christmas is a time where you get together with the bits of the family that you haven't seen for ages, and you catch up about the things of the year. No doubt politics is going to come up. Just have the conversation. If you don't want to have the conversation, go in the other room and drink some mulled wine or something. It's, you know, it's not the end of the world. It's one day of the year. I mean, crikey, do we really have to start saying we have to censor Christmas?
One thing I would say, Mike, is I think it's a really bad idea bringing politics up at all on Christmas Day, or whatever your view.
I don't follow Charlotte's segue. It's like suddenly you're having Brussels sprouts and suddenly you want to discuss the cross-channel migration issue.
Well, that's the one difference at my family Christmas since Brexit.
How does that track to me? It's like, on Christmas, I just want to sit down and, you know, discuss, you know, whether or not, you know, someone gave you the right pair of socks or not for Christmas as well. Dear. You know, I think that's, I mean, if people want to have their own question time panels, that's fine. on a more serious point, I've said this a lot. We have lost the art of disagreement here. I mean, you know, the fact I come on here and sit with you guys is, you know, not because I agree with you, it's because I like to have debate. We can
agree to disagree.
Well, no, we are sensible, mature adults. We want to have a conversation about, you know, I accept most of the audience probably won't agree with what I have to say on a lot of things. But I do worry, you know, on the one hand, I think a courageous conversation, I can see that. But, you know, it sounds like something Sir Humphrey would say to Jim Hacker. You know, like, you're having a very courageous conversation there, Minister. Maybe if someone says something you disagree with around the Christmas table and they're not somebody who has a great deal of power and influence, maybe if, you know, you don't see them once a year, just bite your tongue and just, you know, suck it up and get on with it.
Yeah, but also I don't like the idea that this pamphlet's been published, Mike, because of the wrong-think of Uncle Tony.
Yep.
You know, he needs to...
Maybe Tony's right.
That's it. He needs to be, like, have his wrong opinions corrected.
Well, that goes back to the point about disagreement, doesn't it? I mean, there is a point, you know, I've promised I've got a wide selection of friends across the political spectrum. I don't know anybody I 100% agree with on everything. Even my own wife and I, we don't see eye to eye on every political issue. And yet we can still have conversations about it. But I found that the 15 years I've been working as a journalist and lobbyist, it's become harder to have differentiating conversations. And unfortunately, I have to say it has, you know, happened more on the left. I think there has become a certain degree of person that has become increasingly sensitive and often...
Intolerance?
Intolerance is there, yeah. I think, and it's, you know, it happens on the right as well. But as I said, I do agree that we've lost the art of disagreeing civilly with each other. I mean, you know, 2009, the big thing was where Nick Griffin got to go on Question Time, and they had him on. I think that's one thing they did very, very well. You know, they got a lot of backlash, and but they put him on the panel, and actually he came up short because he was subject to the fair degree of scrutiny he was due. Now, no platform has become more of a thing. I do maintain that it's harder to have a disagreement with somebody.
And the subtext of this pamphlet, Matthew, is that there is something wrong with bigoted Uncle Tony, okay? That he needs to go to a re-education camp because he doesn't think that open borders are empathetic.
How dare he?
You know, he
want to be back of the queue. You know, honestly,
he hasn't got diversity is our strength. You know,
written on his
tattooed on his wrist,
across his forehead is what it should.
But here's the thing about bigoted Uncle Tony, right? He thinks the border's there for a reason. He loves his country. He thinks net zero doesn't make much sense because China are building coal-fired power stations for fun, and he supports the verdict of the Supreme Court that there are two biological sexes. There's nothing wrong with bigoted Uncle Tony. In fact, bigoted Uncle Tony is right about everything.
I think a bigoted Uncle Tony needs to be Prime Minister. He's absolutely spot on. The
We need
fact
to
is,
rename him. Stop calling him bigoted.
bigoted
then,
Uncle
to be fair,
Tony.
guys.
Just right Uncle Tony instead of far right Uncle Tony. I mean, look, at the end of the day, that is the point. We're in a country where Britain seems to be put at the back of the queue. As you said, we are spending billions and billions on net zero when we are making less than 1% of global emissions. China are building a new coal power fire station every single month for the fun of it. We are sending billions
to... coal-powered fire station?
Yeah.
I do like that.
Coal-fired... Anyways, listen, it's too early in the morning. The point is that we're spending billions to the Chagos Islands, handing away our sovereignty. We're taxing us to the hilt about handing out to people on benefits. We've got small boats coming over every single day that we're paying for, putting them up in hotels instead of in camps and back off to where they came from. It's an absolute disgrace, but hey, don't worry. It's all Uncle Tony's fault. He's the problem in this country.
Thank God we found the cause.
Yeah.
Oh.
I'm sure Keir Starmer will be happy.
Absolutely.
Next up, looking forward to this, two major companies, two of the biggest companies in the country. Two of the biggest companies. Luckily, this isn't live.
We're all tripping up now. It's all your fault.
Dave, make sure and edit that out. Two of the biggest companies in the country have just cancelled Christmas. That's next.
Hi, I'm Kevin O'Sullivan, and I've got a message for you. Welcome back to this blockbuster edition of What Just Happened. It really is a good one, I think. It's so funny that people keep calling me Meghan Markle, because it's Meghan Sussex now.
Flynn has said, Samara, I agree with you all the time, but you're just boring. Oh my God.
Hi! I refuse to work for ITV ever again.
Oh!
What Just Happened? Fridays at 9 on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
8:46, do you like the music at the start of each hour on Talk Breakfast? I think, according to producer Dean, it's around 75% for, 25% against. Well, keep those opinions coming. What do you think of the music at the top of the hour? This show belongs to you. I'm at your service. I think it's kind of pacey, but I will say that a good portion of you don't like it. We'll obviously carefully go through it all by. It's going to be very democratic, OK? The people have spoken. At the moment, pro-music is winning, but let's keep an eye on that. This won't be gerrymandered or fixed like other
no second referendums,
democratic.
yeah.
Exactly.
No second referendum.
No. So, folks, listen, really a big response to our conversation today. And how about this from Stephen Cambridge? Great show, Mark. Politics at Christmas. Maybe we should ban the gravy boat to save awkward conversations.
You'd have to have a gravy hotel or something now instead of a gravy boat.
Yes, indeed.
That's
Betty
great.
says, good morning, Mark. It's the left that have to take it too far and re-educate or terminate all of those who don't agree.
Terminate?
Feels like it sometimes.
What
Charlie
Daleks?
Charlie
No,
Kirk was shot.
Oh, yes, good point.
Oh, that's it.
Arnold Schwarzenegger.
That's it. So, no, well done. That was a very good one. Also, how about this from Susan? Good morning, Mark. When did debating become arguing? At school, we had a debating society, and due to having that, people having to take sides in a discussion, we learnt a lot. We never ended up arguing, but put a point of view and then the other put their point of view, and then people would vote and just say if they preferred or didn't. It'd be like the music on this show. That is the way the country should be run. And I will say that I actually appeared on a podcast this week, Mike and Matthew, and it's called the Daily Espresso. And it's part of it's basically a talk show connected to the Daily Express newspaper, hosted by JJ Anisiobi, who's a columnist and a brilliant broadcaster. And we were talking about political division, and I was saying that if you focus on policy, then it becomes a lot less angry, a lot less divisive. You know, when it's like, you know, the figures involved, you know, Farage,
talking about the person,
Starmer, Trump, then, you know, people get their backs up, don't they? But if you break it down to policy, which is, you know, should we police the border? Does the country live beyond its means? There's a lot more consensus than you'd think.
The irony as well is, so my old Twitter bio used to be, I'll debate you, but I won't argue, because I would try and make the difference of a debate is a back and forth about, you know, educational points. An argument is, I'm right, you're wrong. No, I'm right, you're wrong. I think it's really important that we actually do focus on the policy. So let's just talk about the policies for a second. Who is introducing mandatory digital ID without a manifesto promise? Who is introducing tax rises beyond anything in their manifesto promise? Who is introducing an open borders scheme where anyone who comes can stay in hotels and scrapping the only deterrent this country had? Who is cancelling elections at the moment in you know, last year, this year, next year? The Labour Party. And so if we actually talk about policies, there are 4 areas where we can talk about each of those policies and say what we think is right or wrong. But I'd tell you now, if you put that to me and said, who do you think this is? People wouldn't think it's the Labour Party. They think it's Putin's Russia or Kim Jong-un's North Korea. We are living in an authoritarian dictatorship under the banner of Labour.
Care to defend Labour on that one, Mike?
I mean, I would definitely, you know, I can't agree with the phrase we live in an authoritarian dictatorship. I think, to your point about policy, it can be just as contentious as politics. I mean, look at the announcement Shabana Mahmood made a few, you know, weeks ago regarding, say, the, you know, restrictions on the right to remain, right to claim asylum, you know, disapplying certain sections of the European Convention on Human Rights. These are big decisions. I mean, this is the thing. You look at them. If we're not talking about policy, what was the budget about the other week? Then politics has a huge impact on people's lives as well, and it's the decisions that people take, and this is why I think, you know, I see people getting exercised rightly over issues like Israel or Gaza. I do wish we had the same degree of scrutiny on our own policies at home as well, because we do live in a democracy. This government is accountable to the voters. It will be voted out next election if it is not seen to deliver.
Is that a promise?
And the issue becomes that this government is acutely aware that it has secured a huge majority on a record low share of the vote. And I've said this time and again as well, for reform, unless they are careful, they will get a large number of seats on 30%, and they will have the similar trouble with legitimacy. So to be the government of this country means you have to keep an eye on what people think and feel, and that is what makes us a democracy, not an authoritarian dictatorship.
But I don't think anybody thinks or feels that we should be cancelling elections, introducing mandatory digital ID, scrapping jury trials, curbing free speech, all of this not being in a manifesto. You say that the government is accountable to the British public. This was not in their manifesto. They have no mandate to do these things. That's the problem. People have got so little trust in politics nowadays that no wonder it becomes we'll argue instead of disagree, because what's the point in trusting a politician?
Let's go back to 2019. So Boris Johnson was elected on a very tightly focused manifesto around delivering Brexit. The pandemic then happened as well, and Johnson then reverted to the 2019 manifesto. Now, I would argue that in between the 2 points of 2021 and 2019, the UK fundamentally changed because we went through the biggest government intervention that many of us are ever likely to see in our lives.
History, yeah.
Indeed, since the Second World War. Johnson chose not to change tack, and I'd argue that was an abdication of responsibility, because when a government is elected, they have a 5-year mandate. Yes, the manifesto is a template for what they want to deliver, but it cannot foresee every possible scenario.
But Labour haven't dealt with a once-in-a-century pandemic. Labour have dealt with an economy that was turning a corner, with a country that was reopening, with people who are wanting to get back out and back Britain. They have not dealt with a once-in-a-generation pandemic. They have dealt with their own mess.
They
this
have
fake
no
£22
excuse.
billion black hole that they've made up.
That's right.
They have no excuse.
They don't have the Ukraine war, which happened under just before Liz Truss.
It's still going on, to be fair. I mean, they still have to deal with the Ukraine war.
Yeah, it's basically kind of fed through the system now. But when Liz Truss became Prime Minister, she had to find around £50 billion to pay people's energy bills.
Energy bills, yeah, absolutely.
And they didn't. Well, there you go.
Well, fine. The point is that, but the numbers
and
are
she
irrelevant.
found another £50 billion for tax cuts that weren't in the Tory manifesto in 20. And again, no one called for an election.
That's a fair point.
Yeah, but the point is that at the end of the day, what would you have rathered? People be slapped with energy bills of £6,000-7,000, which was what the forecasts were at the time, or the government intervened to help them?
Exactly, but that's an example of how governments have to change and adapt. No one, for example, would have argued that not bailing out the banks in 2008 wasn't, the government, what should the government do in that situation? Oh, we need to stop and have an election for every possible decision. What will be interesting, I think, is if there is a massive change of tack next year, a change of leadership, and a new leader of the Labour Party that changes direction. I think, there will be public pressure for a new election, because this government is seen to have a very thin and flimsy mandate, even if I think under the system they are justifiable to govern for the full 5 years.
A petition has already reached enough signatures to be debated in Parliament about having another general election. It's the second time that a petition's reached that threshold, and every time it obviously reaches that threshold, it's put forward for a debate. If it's knocked down, which it will no doubt be, then fine, there'll be another petition, and we'll sign that again, and we'll keep the pressure on.
The things you're describing, debate, petition, discussion, these are all hallmarks of a democracy. Yeah. And I go back to the point that we are not an authoritarian dictatorship.
Well, I think cancelling elections, scrapping jury trials, raising taxes on the very people that you said you weren't going to raise taxes on, censoring free speech is all the sign marks of an authoritarian dictatorship. But we'll agree to disagree.
Scrapping jury trials and handing over sovereign territory like the Chagos Islands. Chris in York says, good morning, Mark. The purpose of debate is to be open to having your mind changed.
Agree.
That's what's wrong with the leaflet. It should be encouraging their readers to have an open mind to conflicting points of view, not an agenda.
Well, as we said, bigoted Uncle Tom may well be right. You just need to speak to him first.
Most definitely. Brief word on Liz Truss. She's launching a TV show this week, the Liz Truss Show.
I have actually watched it.
What did you think of it?
I think in the first, what she says in the first few minutes that she was, to quote, deposed as Prime Minister. She makes one thing I find with Truss is that she tries to cast herself now as an outsider. This is a person who spent the majority of her sort of 14, 15 years in Parliament in ministerial offices, around the cabinet table from 2014 onwards. So she was in the cabinet room for well over 8 years or so. She finished up as Foreign Secretary and then Prime Minister. To say that she was deposed when she would have claimed the same mandate from her own party to pursue the radical free market policies that she wanted to do, £50 billion of tax cuts, mainly benefiting the richest people in society, is again to come back to the point of, wouldn't that have been a good time to have an election? She wasn't deposed. Her party realised that she was disastrous and they kicked her out.
Well, I think that you're right. I think that probably there should have been an election when the Prime Minister was changed, and that should happen.
Certainly with the money budget. I mean, that was a complete...
Can we hold you to that when Starmer is replaced in late May 2026?
Look, if people are unhappy with the direction that the government is taking in this country as well, and there isn't public support for them to remain in office...
There isn't.
Then... of course they have to consider a democratic mandate. Ultimately, Parliament draws its mandate from the people.
But they won't. Labour are not going to call an early general election because they know they have a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity with a humongous majority, one of the largest majorities this country has ever had. They are going to go for the long game. I think we won't have
that, please.
Honestly, I don't think we will have a general election until May 28 or even May 29.
They'll go as far
as
they
will go
can.
as far as they can. And remember, they said this is a 10-year plan, a 10-year plan. I wouldn't be surprised if we get to May 29 and they go, well, do you know what? Actually, we're going to change the voting laws. We'll have general elections once every 10 years.
Yeah,
but I haven't watched Liz Truss show yet, but I will have a little look. But if people are wanting something else to watch, they can obviously tune into Matthew's Blueprint for Britain, which I've launched. And I'm hoping that you'll be on in a couple of weeks' time.
I'm happy to come on it. In fact, I can't wait to come on it. Matthew's Blueprint for Britain.
Yeah, trying to change this country for
you're
better.
a brilliant broadcaster, and we look forward to it. And Matthew, just briefly, Liz Truss has come up in you know, obviously she's going to have this new show on YouTube. Good luck to her. I think she's been proved right ideologically.
The irony is there are so many people now saying, do you know what, if she had drip-fed what she did, if she had spent more time planning it out and plotting it out, saying an announcement here, then an announcement there, it would have been fine. I think if you look at the context, remember, Liz Truss took over the day before Queen Elizabeth II died. There was 2-week vacuum of any politics, and beforehand, whilst the Conservative Party was having its leadership contest over summer, there was very little movement from government. The country was begging for something to be done when it comes to politics, but there was such a vacuum that it became everything at once. I do think hindsight is a wonderful thing, and God, this Labour government is making Liz Truss look better by the day.
HSBC, one of the biggest banks in the world, bans Christmas jumpers for staff at their branches over fears that they could trigger customers, and Screwfix bans staff from putting up Christmas decorations on the shop floor, sparking fury from workers. There you go, Mike Indian. Christmas has been cancelled.
I was trying to imagine what Christmas decorations at Screwfix would look like if they actually had to affix them to the wall as well.
Well, they have plenty of tools and stuff to do it.
I think Christmas decorations are a wonderful thing to have in any setting and environment. They brighten a considerably dark time of year, and it's, personally, in a country that's largely now secular, we all celebrate Christmas largely as that too.
Yeah.
I don't see the point in this personally.
I've heard that the reason they've cancelled it is elfin safety.
Oh, nicely done. I tell you what, that's why we pay him the big bucks.
Do you?
Matthew. Whoops. Okay.
He's been carrying that around like an albatross for 45 minutes, ready to say that.
The firm's accountant. Do you think, though, that
I've got more, don't worry.
This is like salami slicing, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I posted the thing the other day about the evergreen tree at Tesco's, and so many people saying, oh, it's always been called evergreen tree, but it's just not the point. It's not the point. It's a Christmas tree, and you only are selling it at Christmas time. And yeah, you might have banners saying Christmas and stalls saying Christmas, but put it on the box. It's a Christmas tree. It's a wonderful time of year. People need to get involved and celebrate it. And I'm fed up of people either cancelling, changing, rewriting history. One more Christmas joke before we go. How has Christmas changed since Brexit? No more Brussels. Thank you very much. Good night.
There you go. Well, brilliant job. My thanks to Matthew Goodwin-Freeman and Mike Indian. More to come. This is Talk Breakfast.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
3 minutes past 9, this is Talk Breakfast. Mark Dolan with you until 10 a.m. Happy Saturday, one and all. The BBC on the brink. Reform UK have launched an official complaint after illegal immigrants were smuggled into the audience of Question Time, a show supposedly for the people in this country to debate the political issues of the day. Meanwhile, the Nigel Farage racism row rumbles on. But what does it say about our establishment elite that they're more focused on remarks made in the 1970s than Farage's actual policies in 2025? Donald Trump wins a World Peace Award. Have the media been proved horribly wrong about the Donald, America's first orange president? Have you got Trump envy? Because I do. Also, a new poll puts Labour in fourth position behind the Greens. And Health Secretary Wes Streeting prepares to wield the dagger, we're told, and has reportedly chosen Angela Rayner as his running mate. So are Streeting and Rayner the dream team or Britain's worst nightmare? My priority for the next hour is to get your opinions on the national television and radio airwaves. My phone number is 0344 499 1000. And I want your thoughts about the BBC. How would you fix the BBC? What would you do if you were Director General? And are you unhappy about their decision to feature two illegal immigrants on Question Time? If so, let me know why. You can text the word talk in your message to 87222. Send me a voice note as well. And of course, you can hear us on the radio. Lovely to have you on DAB+ and in app and online. But you can watch the show as well. Head to YouTube and search Talk in the search bar, and up we pop, as the saying goes. Let's talk. So I want your calls on the BBC. What are your latest thoughts about it? Do you still pay the licence fee? Now, does this story bring them into disrepute? And we're going to have, before 10 o'clock, some fun, aren't we, Producer Dean? Because Christmas is coming, lest we all forget. I know that Screwfix have cancelled Christmas, and Tesco and other big corporate companies like HSBC who have banned their staff from wearing Christmas jumpers because apparently it's triggering. But we're celebrating Christmas big time on Talk Breakfast, OK? This show is now the home of Christmas. And today we're going to be asking you, what is the greatest Christmas song of all time? Text the word talk in your message to 87222. What is the greatest Christmas song of all time? Is it Mariah Carey? Is it McCartney? Is it Slade? Is it George Michael? I want to know your favourite Christmas song. Send in your message with your favourite. But first up, live in the studio, a favourite of mine, the political editor of The Sun on Sunday, Kate Ferguson. Good morning, Kate, and welcome back to Talk Breakfast.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm very, very well indeed. And this BBC story's got everything, hasn't it? It's got the issue of illegal immigration, which is a hot political topic. It features Reform UK, who have complained to the BBC, and it features our national state broadcaster. What did you make of the entire fallout from this?
I mean, it's pretty astonishing, really. I'm not surprised that Reform are going hell for leather on this, because if you step back, why have people that have snuck into our country, why have illegal immigrants been given a platform on Question Time by, yes, TV licence fee paid for broadcaster, our flagship broadcaster, their flagship political programme on television? It does raise really serious questions, and I think that will be kind of yet another own goal by the BBC, just a classic. They thought they were being too clever by half, and it's just going to backfire.
Yes, I mean, I'm, like you, a very curious journalist, and I want to hear from illegal immigrants. I want to know why they've come to the UK. I want to know how they did it logistically, who they paid, what their motivations are. That's very important in order to understand the issue and arguably to tackle it and to stop it. But not on a show like Question Time. You can have a documentary. They can be on the news at 10 as someone being interviewed. But Question Time is a microcosm of Parliament, isn't it? It's kind of the people's parliament, a cross-section of political views in the audience, people who have a stake in the future of this country, who pay their taxes and who follow the laws, not folk who shouldn't be here in the first place.
Yeah, I agree. You go about interrogating different people, bringing different stories to light in different ways. So if you were going to be looking at the experience of illegal migrants trying to come here, how they lodge appeals in different countries, how they get smuggled over the border, what they do when they're here, that's one kind of report analysis that sits better in a documentary or a straightforward news piece. Question Time is about everyone in that audience having the right to interrogate their elected, often elected, not always, but usually elected politicians on their thoughts and plans for the country. And I think putting illegal immigrants on the same pedestal as you say, British citizens who pay their taxes, who have a stake in the country, who have a vote, is just bizarre and not right. And it's just going to fuel this. It's just going to fuel this BBC backlash. I mean, sometimes you just think the BBC want to shoot themselves in the face.
Why do you think they did it?
I suspect they thought it was clever and provocative. They have this thing where, you know, they want the questions to be a surprise. I suspect they thought it was a bit of a gotcha. But again, I just don't think that it was particularly clever of them in hindsight.
And I think it may have backfired because one of the people featured revealed that he'd been refused asylum in 6 or 7 other countries. So it's not the best look for Britain that almost all of the sort of civilised Western nations said no to this man and we said yes, which I think speaks volumes. And then the other issue is a guy that essentially lectured the audience on the ECHR and on the Northern Ireland Protocol. It sort of entered into almost comedy at one point, really, didn't it? This guy was reading from his phone. He had, I don't know if he had a hearing aid or what, but some device in his ears. It wasn't a great look.
Yeah, but we don't really need to be lectured on the ECHR or the Northern Ireland Protocol. And also, you know, these arguments can feel so rehearsed. Like, oh, well, you know, we need to have these rules because of A, B, C, D. Well, actually, the thing that is at stake at the moment and that people are very angry about is the sheer number of illegal immigrants coming over here on dinghies. And if we need to re-examine certain legal treaties that we have internationally, then we need to re-examine them. What we don't need is a lecture from someone saying it's impossible to do anything about this because it will have these other consequences. That's just not where the British people are at. So I think this is BBC being quite out of step with the country, which is a criticism, a perennial criticism of the Beeb. So it's a shame that they've walked into this one, I think.
What do you make, Kate, of the ongoing Nigel Farage racism row?
Well, I think that everybody has to answer for comments that they've made. And Nigel, I think, should be frank about comments that he made and whether or not, in what context they were made. Now, he's obviously come forward and said there was a very different context at the time, and I think that is true, and that should also be explored. But I think I'm not in a position to rule one way or another about whose recollections are best. I take your point earlier that it was 50 years ago and that the issue for the Labour government now is, can you take on Nigel Farage today and his political ideas? And I agree. I don't think they will defeat reform in the polls today by branding Farage a racist in his teenage years. But I'm in no position, I don't think, to rule on whether or not those comments were made.
Yes, I mean, I think that I agree with all of that. I think political archaeology is a tricky area, isn't it? Because you've got the likes of Diane Abbott, who was very warm and friendly towards the IRA. Now, for those old enough to remember, you won't because you've just had your birthday and you're dangerously young. Or you've got great skin, bit of both. But you know, the IRA, what did they do? Well, they were terrorists who killed innocent people. They were bad. The IRA were bad, and they were supported, but their cause was supported by Diane Abbott, right? That's arguably a shameful thing. She's entitled to support them, but we can judge her as shameful. No political consequences from that. And I totally agree with you. No one's going to go into bat and defend what Nigel may or may not have said when he was 16 or 17 years of age. Are you surprised that he's not just denied all of it or been more sure-footed in his handling of it? Because I feel he's looked a little hesitant and a little rattled by the whole thing.
I think he probably is a bit rattled by the whole thing. I mean, I'm not surprised Labour are making hay with it. They are terrified of Nigel Farage. Reform is their big threat in the polls. And they see reform as really the Nigel Farage show still. So while we do have other figures, we've just talked about Zia Youssef, while they are trying to build a bigger party and infrastructure, there is the core of Labour's belief in reform is that if you can pull down Nigel, reform will fall with him. So it's so that's why a lot of their attacks are going to be so personal, so focused on the man. I think the one thing I would say about Nigel is this is not a kind of, even though he's been in politics for decades, he's not a kind of professional politician. So you don't get that thing with him where he will have worked on a particular kind of line with his spads and then he's kind of tricksily trying to tread it. He's kind of quite honest and open and frank. And I think that's where that's probably what we've seen this week, where, you know, he's not had that very crafted line that maybe allows him a bit of wriggle room here, and so that can maybe seem a bit rattled, but maybe I think he likes to just honestly reply to stuff.
I think you might be right. I think that sort of rather sort of shoot from the hip approach that he has generally been very favourable for him, but with a specific story like this, it's perhaps exposed him a little bit. I just think it's been out of character that he didn't confidently deal with it. He wasn't able to confidently laugh it off. You can imagine Donald Trump would have a field day with allegations about what he may have said at high school when he was 16. I mean, he would have turned it into another kind of flagship speech at a hustings somewhere, whereas Nigel looked a bit cornered about it. I mean, I think he's angry, understandably. Will there be any political consequences from it as a story, do you think?
I actually don't particularly think so. We've had these stories rumbling on for quite a few weeks now. I don't think that people think Nigel Farage is racist. And I don't think they think his policies are racist. And I think, if anything, a lot of people who support him or are sympathetic to his policies are nervous that they're being branded racist by Labour. So when Keir Starmer went on the attack in Labour Party conference saying Reform's immigration policies are racist, actually a lot of voters, a lot of Brits thought, hang on a minute, are you calling me racist because I back their policies? So there's a danger it veers into that area, that you're seen as kind of smearing a man for stuff he may or may not have said in his teenage years, which were for him 50 years ago, or nearly 50 years ago, and that you're veering towards branding supporters racist for valid concerns about borders. So I don't think it's yet really chipped away at his popularity, and I don't think it's cutting through. And in terms of those former Labour voters that are switching over to Reform, I don't think this will be a popular line of attack. What it might do, which is another thing Labour need to do and are trying to do, is unify this so-called kind of progressive left. So those people that are flirting with the Greens, can you focus minds there and tell them, you know, stop flirting with the Greens, come on, you need to row in behind Labour because there's this dangerous man, as we say, Nigel Farage, on the horizon. So I think this attack is actually about playing to the left rather than the Rose Reform voters.
That's interesting, and I think the demonisation of Nigel Farage and the political archaeology probably won't work in the way that it didn't work with Trump. In many ways, it emboldened his supporters when establishment media went after Trump, and it created more of a them and us sort of dynamic, didn't it? And I think the other thing, just before we move on to a possible new Prime Minister in just a moment, Kate, is that I think it's underestimated how concerned Brits of all ethnicities are about the direction of the country, and indeed issues like illegal immigration, that this is not about, you know, having a more white country or anything like that. And it's very likely that if Reform win the next election, they'll do so off the back of plenty of ethnic British votes.
Yeah, that's totally true. And the issue with the borders has always been a few things. One, it's fairness. The most important thing is fairness. If you come through the fair and legal channels, if you pay your way, if you work here when you settle here, make your life here, then Britain for a long time has had a very kind of expansive idea of what it means to be British. It's not been exclusionary at all. So I think it's about fairness first and foremost, and also about kind of what the country can afford realistically. You know, how many homes are there, how many jobs are there, what we can actually, how many we can actually take fairly without causing these tensions within society. And you know what? Every state, every government in the history of human civilization has grappled with these things. And when the state and the government has been very out of kilter with its population, it doesn't last very long.
I think that's right. That's where revolutions come. We may get one of those in 3 years' time. And it's interesting what you said there about the practicalities of it in regards to illegal immigration and You know, I've tried to sort of talk to some of my lefty mates, of whom I have many, and I've tried to explain, make the left-wing argument for ending illegal immigration, because all you have with it is further competition for precious state resources upon which poor Brits are reliant, which is why they're so aggrieved by the sight of those boats, because they know it's not good news for them. Listen, let's get on to not good news for the Prime Minister. So on manoeuvres, I think since he was in his mother's womb, Wes Streeting wants to be Prime Minister. And are you buying this line that that he's been in touch with Angela Rayner and that they could be the sort of dream ticket, the two of them?
Okay, so yeah, I think Wes Streeting has made no secret of his ambition. He's an ambitious man, and he's obviously one of the favourites to potentially succeed Keir Starmer if Keir's ousted and Labour look for a new leader and PM. I suspect this story is slightly overspun, but what I think is totally true and without doubt is that if there is some kind of battle for the leadership, whether or not that's this call for a coronation, a sort of bloodless revolution, or if in fact it goes to a vote with the MPs and the membership, Wes Streeting is going to need to ally himself with this so-called soft left. And actually, it's really funny, Angela Rayner, like, ever since she's had to resign in disgrace over her tax affairs, she's become, like, almost more powerful as this kind of king/queen maker figure. Everyone's having to kiss the ring, everyone's having to heap praise on her, and everyone is going to want her endorsement when that race comes. So I doubt very much that there's sort of like a secret plot yet, because it's so early days, but it does Wes Streeting and his team well know that they need Angela's backing, or at least not her opposition, if he's going to stand a real chance of leadership. I think that's true.
Well, yes, I mean, I happen to think that she is, in a sense, Labour's Boris Johnson type figure. You know, larger than life, maverick individual who has cut through, who makes headlines, who's loved by the party faithful. I think she might be thinking, no, I'm not going to be Wes Streeting's Deputy Prime Minister. I'm taking the top job.
I certainly don't think she's going to be making any of those kind of pacts at the moment, because you don't know how long it will be, and the longer it is since she's had to resign over her tax affairs, the more I think people around her will be saying, Angie, you know what, memories fade, maybe it's your time to shine. I was interviewing Jacob Rees-Mogg, the kind of, you know, obviously famous Tory politician, a few weeks ago, and he was saying that he thinks Angela Rayner would be their best leader. He says she's got ridge, she's got cut through, and actually she was by far their best at the dispatch box. But, you know, is it going to be possible for somebody in the Labour Party who ultimately didn't pay their taxes to be Labour leader?
Well, I don't just enjoy The Sun on Sunday's political coverage. I rely on it because it contains the inside track on what's happening in Westminster and the biggest political scoops. The editor of The Sun on Sunday, political editor, is Kate Ferguson. Do check out the paper tomorrow. Of course, a lot of it will be online later today, will it not?
Yeah, tonight.
Tonight, thesun.co.uk. Thank you, Kate. I hope to see you in a week's time. Rob Moore is the Associate Sports Feature Editor at The Sun. Rob, I want to talk about the World Cup draw. Is it a good one for England?
Yes and no, Mark. Yes and no. At the group...
Politicians answer.
I thought I'd follow from Kate's wonderful assessment of politics. But look, I mean, Croatia, we all know what happened in 2018 when England lost in the semi-finals. They did beat them at Euro 2021 at Wembley as they got to the final then. So, and Luka Modric is still going at 40. So England-Croatia is one that's going to be probably the hardest match in the group. They also play Ghana. They've only played them once in their whole history. So a little bit of an unknown quantity, but Ghana are not in the African Cup of Nations. So that says a lot. And Panama, well, England smashed them many World Cups ago, so they should do that again. So, look, I mean, there's 48 nations in this expanded, the biggest World Cup ever. There is a last 32, so we're only going to eliminate 16 nations. So England will qualify. Something has to go disastrously wrong for them to qualify. But the question is, Mark, and people are debating this now, is it easier for England to win the group or finish second? Now, if England win the group, there is a possibility they might play in the quarterfinals in Mexico, or against Mexico themselves in Mexico City. They may have to play Brazil in the next round, then potentially Argentina, then potentially France.
Wow.
If they were to finish second, they would potentially play Spain in the last 16, and that would be no pushover, given what happened last summer at Euro 2024, and then Belgium, France and Argentina. So look, whatever happens, whoever wins this World Cup is going to have to win 8 matches to get through to the sort of to pick up that glistening trophy. So it's going to be the biggest, the boldest tournament ever, and none more typified by what we saw last night on telly, that drawn-out ceremony with Donald Trump taking centre stage. I mean, it's going to be a different World Cup than we've ever experienced before.
It will be. It'll be the Donald Cup, won't it? And it'll have an orange wig on it. Rob, before I let you go, have England finally got it right with their choice of manager?
I think so, yeah. I mean, this is a guy that's won the Champions League and obviously had success in the Premier League with Chelsea. I think the thing is, Mark, I don't think it matters about the manager. I don't think it necessarily matters about the squad. I mean, this is probably one of England's best squads that we've ever had in our lifetime, probably since 1970 World Cup in terms of an actual squad. It's the heat. It's the climate. It's going to be keeping the ball and actually not getting knackered in those times. So we're going to find out later this afternoon whereabouts England are going to play those group matches. Is it going to be in Toronto? Is it going to be in Dallas? Is it going to be in air-conditioned stadiums? And that's going to be a factor, because if England are losing the ball in very hot temperatures in the middle of the day in America, doesn't matter who they've got as manager in the dugout, they're going to struggle, because we always do in those climates. So that's going to be an issue for any player at the end of a very long Premier League season as well.
And Rob, enjoy the football this weekend. Rob Maul is the Associate Sport Features Editor at The Sun. Thank you, Rob. We'll speak soon. It is 9:23 and the BBC and Question Time are now being pursued by Reform UK following the featuring of 2 illegal immigrants on the flagship Question Time show. Next up, a former BBC star speaks out.
Hi, I'm Kevin O'Sullivan, and I've got a message for you. Welcome back to this blockbuster edition of What Just Happened. It really is a good one, I think. It's so funny that people keep calling me Meghan Markle, because it's Meghan Sussex now.
Flynn has said, Samara, I agree with you all the time, but you're just boring. Oh my God.
I refuse to work for ITV ever again. Oh! What Just Happened? Fridays at 9 on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
How do you solve a problem like the BBC? Well, Brad says, good morning, Mark. The BBC, much like Gary Lineker, feel they are untouchable. The problem is that I feel they're correct. Every time they get away with it, it emboldens them. Labour will never do anything about them, and that's why the BBC are trying to stop Reform UK. Well, the BBC have made headlines this week featuring 2 illegal immigrants on the flagship politics show Question Time. Let's get reaction now from former BBC star, the broadcaster and journalist Sally Jones. Good morning, Sally.
Morning, Mark.
What do you think motivated the BBC to feature two people that had entered the country illegally on Question Time?
I think it was outrageous. I think it was a real gotcha moment. They were trying to put Zia Yusuf, the Reform spokesman, on the spot by producing these guys who were going to make it look as though all migrants were delightful, hardworking people with a dreadful backstory. I mean, for all I know, they did have a dreadful backstory, but they came into this country illegally, and every time somebody comes across the channel on a small boat, it's going to encourage thousands of others who don't like the country they're living in, whether or not they're in a war zone. England and Britain is a lovely place to live, and I can quite see why a lot of people want to come here. But the BBC were using these two men to try to put Zia Yusuf on the spot and really to try to show the Reform Party as a whole in a really negative light by making him look, for example, like a racist, like somebody who wants to send these poor deserving chaps back to Afghanistan or Iran or wherever they've come from. But it was quite obvious that it was orchestrated because the migrant who'd come from Iran was actually reading his answers off a smartphone, very much a suggestion that they could have been written for him. He seemed suspiciously familiar with the Irish protocol, you know, with the various political problems surrounding it. And it also seemed that he was being fed the answers through an earpiece. It was very much as though he was repeating what somebody was telling him, simply in order to make Reform look bad.
If it was an effort at propaganda, it failed, didn't it?
It really did. The problem is that every time the BBC puts its thumb in the scales and tries to come down harder on Reform or give them a harder time at anything, whether it's an interview on the news or something on Question Time, it just solidifies the sort of support for them amongst ordinary people who don't hold the sort of widespread BBC view that all migrants are charming people that we should be welcoming with open arms wherever they come from to these shores. And I think that the problem is that they show themselves as increasingly biased, and it's so sad. My daughter, who's a political commentator, quite often goes on Question Time, and she has said that the audiences appear to be extraordinarily biased. The moment anybody says something vaguely left liberal or pro-trans, pro-migrant, the place goes wild. The moment she might put an opposing point of view, however sagely and sensibly, there's an absolute resounding silence. I would think that you could probably count the Tory or Reform audience members on any Question Time on probably the fingers of one finger, if not the fingers of one hand.
Most definitely. Of course, your daughter is Madeline Grant, who is an outstanding journalist and broadcaster, much like her mother, right? It didn't skip a generation. Sally, how would you fix the BBC? Because I think I certainly believe in the BBC. I like the existence of it. It's got amazing soft diplomatic power internationally. They do make some great dramas, some great sports coverage, some of the news output. The BBC has it's got a role in public life, but at the moment it's drastically at odds with where many of the British people are. So how would you solve a problem like the BBC?
Well, I'm speaking from a perspective of someone who absolutely loves much of what the BBC do. One of the proudest days of my life was being accepted from university onto the BBC News training scheme, which was something I'd absolutely longed to do for much of my teens, and I couldn't believe it. The problem is that while a lot of the Westminster coverage by the BBC is absolutely even-handed, there's a lot of scrutiny on it. You see people like Laura Kunsberg and co who are extraordinarily good on not letting their political biases show and to some extent leaving their biases at the door. The problem is the rest of the news output and a number of the current affairs and even some of their comedy shows, it's all left liberal. They're basically drawing much their staff from a sort of widening pool of left liberal humanities graduates. the difficulty is trying to widen the political diversity of the people they recruit. I always felt slightly like a fish out of water by not being especially left liberal even as a teenager, but I think that's going to be their problem, and I think they also need an external body really carefully to monitor their treatment of, say, Question Time, that the audience make up, even the sort of questions, the type of subjects that they're dealing with. I mean, the BBC, for example, have got a lot of form on Question Time. I can remember 5 years ago when Lawrence Fox, there was a similar gotcha moment. They had planted a woman who was an academic and a race researcher, a mixed race woman, whose job, she could well have been on the panel. She was extremely articulate, but her job was basically, I think, to incite a row with Lawrence Fox by rudely calling him a white privileged male and having a real go at him until he reacted. And that's the sort of thing they should not be planting and putting people like that into the audience. There's always a sense of the BBC as a sort of smug elite. They don't like the cut of somebody like Farage's job, of his gym. You know, they're busy sort of holding their noses and saying, ugh, this nasty common little man, he's rather like a bookies runner. We don't like the sort of guys like him. They've got to try to shift this perception of a metropolitan Islington elite, and it's going to be very, very difficult.
Yes, it's hard not to see the BBC these days, Sally, as an extension of the left-wing blob.
Totally. And when you see the recent complaints about all the sort of beady focus on some stupid thing that Farage might or might not have said when he was a young teenager at Dulwich College, whether or not he was racist. I mean, I think whether or not he said it, we all do and say stupid things when we're teenagers. A lot of us say them much later on. But, you know, it seems a bit over the top to keep banging on about that when probably almost nobody has got a clear recollection of 40, nearly 50 years ago of what somebody said or did. And they're probably using somebody with an axe to grind to try to do yet another gotcha moment. And also the fact that they give heavy sort of coverage of every time there's some sort of scandal with a Reform candidate, or they lose the whip because they've been seen to post something stupid in their previous existence, whereas there's almost no coverage of that. And it's been shown this week of similar candidates from the Labour and Tory parties losing the whip. So they've really got to get out of this mindset of feeling that just because they think they're nice people and everybody else is horrible, that it's okay to target and to attack full-time Reform. And it seems simply because they're a very popular party, but they will only grow more popular among the rank and file and all the old Red Wall constituencies if the BBC keeps on like this.
Sally, have an excellent Saturday and we'll catch up soon. Sally Jones is a broadcaster, journalist and former star on the BBC. An amazing story. A left-wing pressure group have created a leaflet to help woke youngsters survive Christmas with their right-wing family members. You wouldn't believe it, right? They've offered advice about, diversity is our strength, open borders are empathetic, net zero makes a mistake, but makes sense. What we're going to do next, we're going to talk about bigoted Uncle Tony, okay, this dangerous right-wing uncle of yours, asleep on the armchair on Christmas Day. Is he really so bigoted, or is Uncle Tony right? We'll discuss that next.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On YouTube. On your mobile. And on your side. This is Talk.
You are listening to Talk Breakfast. Mark Dolan with you until 10 a.m, at which point Cardi B makes a glorious return. Peter Cardwell live at Cardi B. I even got the nickname wrong. I diverted and went past the pun there. 9:38 Talk Breakfast. Peter Cardwell is coming up. And listen, I'm back tomorrow, 6 till 10. Do join me for all your favourite features, including the front pages, big opinions, big guests, and Dolan's Dispatch. What about this wonderful leaflet, a left-wing group called Cities for... What are they called again, Dean? I've forgotten. Cities of Sanctuary UK, exposed by the brilliant journalist, the one and only Charlotte Gill. Do you want to play the clip? Yeah, let's have that clip. Go for it.
But I've signed up to its newsletter because I saw that it was giving tips on how to deal with your problematic relatives if they want to talk about immigration, refugees over the Christmas table. We've all been there, you know, you're passing the Brussels sprouts over, before you know it you're discussing the asylum system. But luckily, City of Sanctuary UK, this charity that wants to turn the UK into sanctuary cities, you know, like the ones that they had in the US under the Democrats, luckily they've got this guide. So in my most recent newsletter about the guide, they write, "Hello Charlotte, seeing family over Christmas, you're not alone if you're thinking about these conversations you might normally shy away from. Maybe there's that uncle with strong opinions or a cousin who shares questionable posts online, and you care deeply about refugee rights but aren't quite sure how to bring it up without things getting ... tense. Well, we've got your back. Download our free Courageous Conversation Guide."
Oh, there you go, the brilliant Charlotte Gill. Check out her X feed. Just go to X and search Charlotte Gill, Gill. She's very good at exposing this left-wing madness. Can we talk about bigoted Uncle Tony, right? The fictional uncle in your living room, asleep on the couch on Christmas Day. Bigoted Uncle Tony thinks that net zero doesn't make a lot of sense because China are building 8 coal-fired power stations every 10 minutes. He doesn't think that open borders are a good idea. He thinks that there are 2 sexes, which is a view shared by the Supreme Court. Uncle Tony, bigoted Uncle Tony, is right, isn't he, about everything? Cindy is in Michigan in the United States. Hi, Cindy.
Good morning, Mark. I really want to talk about bigoted Uncle Tony here. He's my favorite uncle, and he's not bigoted. He's got a lot of common sense. It's crazy.
Well, isn't bigoted Uncle Tony just what everyone thought 20 years ago?
Yes, it is. I think we, or Talk here, needs to write a pamphlet for the lefty loonies on how to talk to them, because they're the ones that don't like to talk. They like to fight.
Yes, and they won't engage in debate. They won't engage in issues around policy. It's tribal. You're a bad person. You're the enemy.
Yeah, and I can't tell you how many friends of almost 30 years that have cut me off.
How does that make you? How does that make you feel, Cindy?
You know, at first, very sad. Very, very sad, because 30 years is an awfully long time. But, you know, now that I think of it, it's like good riddance, because who needs friends like that?
Well, they were never your friends.
I'm a very peaceful person, and I like to talk, and I'm very open, and I like to think I have common sense and I'm sensible.
Yeah.
But, you know, these people, they did it over Facebook anyway. Who does things like that?
Well, I know we've got a contributor to this channel, Cindy, and she's had a message from a cousin saying, I don't want anything to do with you anymore because of your bigoted views. And that person, that broadcaster, all she thinks is that, you know, you should have a border which is correctly policed. She's not anti-immigration or any of those things. She's not an extremist. Those people that won't talk to you anymore, Cindy, what's happened to them? Why do you think that they've become like that?
You know, first of all, I think it's easy to, when you move away, especially, and you just have contact over Facebook, it's easy to forget about the the closeness that you once had. And I think that there's a lot of people that like to virtue signal. They want to feel that they look good in everybody's eyes. And if you were to go and dig in their daily lives, I'm sure they're not that good.
No, well, they're definitely not. And sometimes in America, it's a particular issue, isn't it, Cindy, with not just friends falling out, but family members. Sometimes now you'll have a family split over Thanksgiving or Christmas.
Yes, it is. We could talk for hours, Mark. My mother gave me a big lecture on how bad of a boogeyman Trump is.
Oh, no, it's the last thing you need, isn't it? I will say, look, I'm
getting it from all angles, you know?
Yeah, and I don't think, I don't think the right are any angels at all, Cindy, okay? But this intolerance seems to be a particular issue on the left.
We're all human, and people, especially on the left, I will say, especially, they need to learn to communicate and actually just, communicate. It's not a fight. It shouldn't have to be a fight.
It shouldn't be. And Cindy, I just think that actually, Uncle Tony's not bigoted. You're not bigoted. What's happened is the world's gone mad and the institutions has shifted crazy left. And it means that you've got people like Bill Maher in America, who's a US talk show host and comedian.
Oh, yeah, I love him.
He's great. And he's a famous liberal, famously left-wing. But the left hate him now because he said the woke stuff's crazy.
Oh, and he went to have dinner with Donald Trump, and he just wanted to see for himself and have conversations. And I just also want to add, I love your opening music that you play at the top of every hour. I love it. You know why? It gets me going.
Well,
It
listen,
really does.
I'm here to get you going. Cindy, listen, you've not been cancelled by me, and if geography allowed, I would certainly happily spend Thanksgiving or Christmas Day with you, because, Cindy, you talk a lot of sense and you want to hear from all opinions. I don't think you'd cancel anyone. Call me again soon, Cindy. Thank you for your excellent support. By the way, there are clips online of Hillary Clinton absolutely celebrating how many deportations she's been responsible for. So the bottom line is that, the world's gone mad. You haven't. I'm so excited about my new favourite show. It's my new favourite TV show, and it's on YouTube, and it's a brilliant talk show called Talk Women. And it's presented by Alex Phillips and Samara Gill, two friends of mine. And this week it featured Layla Cunningham, Alison Pearson and Sharon Davies. Take a listen.
We have our own sex offenders. We just don't need to import them. I think what we need to do, number one, is better policing on platforms. And we need to just stop allowing men into this country who see women as something to be taken and something to be abused.
Something like weightlifting or world's strongest woman. I mean, you're going to have a clear advantage if you're a man.
It is the law for you to say, you cannot be in my changing room, you cannot be in my toilet, you cannot be in my sport.
All of that now is being wiped out, and it's like a desecration of our culture, isn't it?
Brilliant stuff. Talk Women coming up. I've got an apology, by the way, which is we've had voice notes today. We're going to get the voice notes out tomorrow. It's been such a busy show, and I love the voice notes, so apologies we've not got to those because we've been packed out. Next up, what is the greatest Christmas song of all time? The debate is coming. Don't go anywhere.
Hi, I'm Kevin O'Sullivan, and I've got a message for you. Welcome back to this blockbuster edition of What Just Happened. It really is a good one, I think. It's so funny that people keep calling me Meghan Markle, because it's Meghan Sussex now.
Flynn has said, Samara, I agree with you all the time, but you're just boring. Oh my God.
I refuse to work for ITV ever again. Oh! What Just Happened? Fridays at 9 on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
9:49. Once again, apologies. So many voice notes. We will play your voice notes tomorrow, I promise, because actually they are the best part of the show, as well as your calls and texts. Live in the studio, speaking of best part of the show, is Virgin Radio star Steve Denyer. And Steve, normally we have the Retro Rewind, we choose a year and we're nostalgic, but of course Christmas is coming, so what are we doing today?
We're talking about Christmas songs. Virgin Radio Christmas has been launched. We're kind of drip feeding the Christmas songs, so this week we've had a few, and then there's more next week, and then of course, you know, the week leading up to Christmas, there's loads. Can I take you all the way back to arguably the first one? And some might say, apparently this track's been in more charts across more decades than any other, and I believe we've got a clip of Bing Crosby. And take a little look at this. This is, of course, White Christmas. Should we have a look?
I'm dreaming of a white Christmas with every Christmas card I write. May your days be merry and bright.
Wonderful.
Do you want to know how many copies that sold? How many?
More than a million, I reckon.
50 million.
That's incredible.
There were two versions. So it's 1942, and then it was remade in 47 because the 1942 copy was played so much it lost quality.
Wow.
So Bing Crosby really kind of literally kicked off the whole thing.
Now, when you say that, did he have to go in and re-record it? Did he go back into the studio
went back in
and
to
sung it again?
It was on movie soundtracks. So what they did is he did a bespoke version after the original versions were used in the movie. So because everybody loved it, and it took on a whole new meaning within the war as well. So he actually re-recorded it, and it's gone down as a Christmas classic, and it's beautiful.
It's a great tune, and what a lovely baritone voice he's got.
Just perfect. Can I ask you, what's your favourite Christmas song?
Well, it's got to be Step Into Christmas, Elton John.
That's an amazing one.
And the reason being, full disclosure,
yeah.
I don't think it's the best Christmas song, okay? I think that goes to, you know, either sort of George Michael, Wham, or Mariah, or Slade, okay? I think they get it. But I'm a huge fan of Elton John. I think he's a genius. I think it's a lovely lyric. Step into Christmas, the admission is free. I think is a lovely lyric.
Yes.
And it's got this, and I won't sing, but it's got this great guitar riff at the beginning.
It's perfect, isn't it?
Yeah. And when I hear it, when I'm in a shopping centre, I think Christmas has come. Well done, Elton.
He sang the whole song off mic.
Is
deliberately.
that right?
Yeah. And it hasn't got a bespoke video. He performed it on the Gilbert O'Sullivan show, and they just used that. And if you go onto Elton John's Instagram page, he did a really fun reel a week ago.
I saw that.
He's in his kitchen and he's opening cupboards and the song keeps appearing. And it's just perfect.
Great bit of social media.
Just perfect.
What is he, 78, 79 now? And he's still got it, old Elton, hasn't he?
Amazingly so. You know, and he is the epitome of a national treasure.
I mean,
really
how many
is.
Elton tracks qualify for the Virgin playlist? I mean, he pops up
you see on Virgin Radio Legends, which incidentally Alan Brazil's on tonight at 6 o'clock doing his first show, but we play so many of Elton John's songs from all the different decades, and they're all memorable. I think everybody's got different reasons why they love it. He's literally soundtracked our lives.
Yeah, and you know, he's managed to do it 70s, you know, Rocket Man, Candle in the Wind.
Yeah.
And then 80s, I'm Still Standing, you know, so So it's been a perennial, hasn't it? Alan Brazil, you mentioned Alan.
Yes.
Do you see Alan much?
I do.
What a legend as well, speaking of legends.
Incredible.
So he is going to star in a new show on Virgin Radio, Virgin Legends, the channel.
Yes.
And it's tonight, isn't
Tonight at 6 o'clock. It's his first show. And he came on my show about a year ago. And literally, he's got, you might not know, but he's got so many kind of rock and roll connections. He knows the greats.
He's very close to Rod Stewart.
Yep.
Yeah, and this guy, so I bumped into him yesterday for the first time and I said, Mr. Brazil, lovely to meet you. My name's Mark Dolan. He said, I know who you are. And so there you go. And well, that's brilliant. So we've got a clip of Sir Elton. Here we go.
Should we play it?
Welcome to my Christmas song. I'd like to thank you for the year. So I'm sending you this Christmas card to say it's nice to have you here.
There you go.
I'd like to sing about all the things.
That is fantastic. That is Step Into Christmas by Elton John. I've had lots and lots of nominations from our listeners.
Should we go through them?
Let's do it. Ant in Sunderland, who also we've got Martin in Sevenoaks, Bridget in France, and Lee in Burnley love Fairy Tale of New York by the Pogues.
Yeah, it took 2 years to record this track. Apparently Shane MacGowan was universally known as a perfectionist, so he kept changing it. Originally it was just going to be Shane MacGowan. Kirsty MacColl came in right at the last minute, and it has gone down as one of those kind of Irish kind of folklore, New York tracks.
Yes.
Really, really special. It never got to #1 when it was released because the Pet Shop Boys got to #1 with Always on My Mind, which is interesting, isn't it? Because you would really think that that is an ultimate #1, but it has got to #1 recently. In fact, I think it's been in the top 10 every year since that track came out. But for me, as soon as I hear that song, I take stock and think about, you know, like what we've been through this year and the people in your life. I know it's a bit mushy, but it's Christmas.
No, I think it is wonderful. And poor Kirsty MacColl, who passed far too young, a great talent.
Absolutely.
And I always think of her and bless her memory whenever I hear that song as well.
And you know what? There's a bench in London Soho Square dedicated to Kirsty MacColl, and every December people get together. I think it might be this weekend or next weekend, and they go around and they play the Pogues, and there's a little kind of like, you know, little thing in the bench, you know, RIP in Kirsty MacColl.
Well, that's it. She was a true legend. God bless her. John in Angus and Mike in London. Merry Christmas, everybody. Slade.
Yes.
Huge. I mean, this could be the greatest single of all time.
Yeah, I mean, so Dave Hill, I interviewed him a couple of weeks ago on Virgin Radio 80s, and he came in and he says, Steve, you know, the thing is, we recorded it in a heat wave in August in New York. It's
always the way.
And it was John Lennon that gave them the studio. He needed some time off, an afternoon off, and they used, apparently, John Lennon's guitar in that track, but it was a heat wave. It was over 100 degrees, and they recorded that. Apparently, Noddy Holder came up with the It's Christmas thing on a toilet in Birmingham. He started shouting, "It's Christmas," and they thought, let's use that on the song.
So they dropped it in?
They dropped it in.
I mean, I think this is a serious contender for top spot. Take a listen.
I don't think we got that track.
Oh, we haven't?
No,
Okay.
but we just... Because everyone knows what it is.
That's fine, because I'll sing it. So here it is, everybody. Okay, I don't want to lose our audience here.
That was very good.
But it's a Merry Christmas, everybody. It's huge. What about Queen, Thank God It's Christmas?
Well, this is an interesting one. So this song came out exactly the same year as Band Aid and Wham! Last Christmas. This song is a beautiful song. It's only become really big since Freddie Mercury passed. This song only got to #21 in the charts when it came out because it had so much competition. It was a bad year if you weren't Band Aid because you had Frankie Goes to Hollywood, The Power of Love, you had Wham! Last Christmas, but the other Queen boys say that this could be Freddie Mercury's greatest vocal because it's quite understated, and it's quite emotional as well. Thank God It's Christmas is really beautiful. It's a great song. We play it on Virgin Radio. It's one of those songs that goes down really well.
It is a
People
beautiful
love
composition. That's why I like Step Into Christmas. It's just a decent song.
Perfect.
Forget about Christmas. It's just a good song. As is. By the way, that's Bruce in Swansea and Edwin in Hampshire love Queen. John in Berkshire and Sophie in Belfast. Last Christmas one.
Oh, Yeah.
Talking of great songs. Talking of great songs that you could listen to all year round.
Yes, exactly. And this is another one that didn't get to #1 originally because
Wow.
Band-Aid. So it was up against Band-Aid. Everybody, because of the famine, the Ethiopia thing, this was a charity, the biggest charity single of all charity singles. People bought that. It has since got to #1, sadly, after George passed. George Michael played every instrument on the track.
Is that right?
Isn't it amazing?
And the production on it, with that synthesizer effect and everything.
Yeah.
It's a very unique song.
Do you remember the video to it? The video looks like a Marks and Spencer's advert before Marks and Spencer's ever did adverts. It's like an 80s version of a Marks and Spencer's advert.
I love it.
But it's a lot of fun, and it's, again, one of those songs that is, it still sounds great now. You know, here we are, 40 years on.
Yes, George Michael, a genius. Louise in Fife and Adam in Norfolk, Band-Aid, Do They Know It's Christmas?
It's the big one, isn't it? What do you think of that?
I think, do you know what? It turns out it's actually a great song as well.
It is. It is, isn't
and
it?
knocked together by Midge Ure and Bobby Geldof, is that right?
That's right. Within 24 hours, they managed
It's
to
a
write
decent
it.
tune. I think it's better than the American one, which was We Are the World. I think that...
Far better.
I think this is...
far kind of more emotive. My favourite
Yeah.
fact about that is...
Do They Know It's Christmas? What a lyric.
Boy George overslept in New York, so Bob Geldof said, "You get yourself back here now." So he had to jump on Concorde. Apparently he had a bottle of whiskey, turned up to the studio,